That dress really suits you.
Sophia didn't respond to those words, instead looking slightly confused. My sister-in-law, Michelle, had for some reason handed over my daughter Zoe's dress to her own daughter, Sophia. Unable to fully grasp the situation, I remained silent.
See, doesn't it look much more adorable on Sophia?
Michelle said this with a mocking smile, then pressed the dress against Sophia's shoulders. If I were to respond here, it might lead to an argument. When I looked over at my husband, Jake, he stayed quiet, his face pale.
Wouldn't you agree that Sophia looks cuter in that dress than Zoe does? Or does Zoe think she's cuter than Sophia? Do you think you're somehow better than her?
Jake, why are you saying it like that?
I can confidently say Sophia looks way cuter. Am I thinking about this all wrong?
Michelle's tone grew more intense, as if she'd claimed a decisive victory. I wondered what I was witnessing here.
Sophia, wearing a dress is something special. If someone offers it to you, you absolutely take it. Got it?
Michelle shot a glare at Jake. Why is it he can never stand up to her? Though he's my husband, I couldn't help feeling a twinge of disappointment, and yet his next words, regardless of Michelle's pressure, were unforgivable.
Well, it's true that the dress looks better on Sophia than on Zoe, anyway.
When Jake looked down at Zoe and said that, time stopped for me. His words hit me like a cold splash of water. Zoe's small face changed to an expression filled with sadness. Thank you for everything up until now. Taking Zoe's hand, I said this flatly. She also sensed my resolve, nodded slightly, and then looked back at Jake.
Goodbye, Dad.
With that, we began preparing to leave together. As we walked out the door, Michelle's laughter echoed behind us. But Zoe and I didn't stop. We kept walking, committed to a new future, not looking back. But everything would change in just 10 minutes. My name is Kate Turner, and I'm 45 years old. I live with my husband, Jake, and our daughter, Zoe. I've always thought we had a peaceful and happy home. In our open dining kitchen with a view of the living room, I was casually preparing breakfast. My kind husband, Jake, was reading the paper, and our 8-year-old daughter, Zoe, was getting ready for the day. Just before leaving for school, she has a habit of double-checking her backpack. Aside from weekends, I also work part-time as a dressmaker. Perhaps out of consideration for my busy schedule, Zoe is an independent, easygoing child who handles things herself. Jake absolutely adores Zoe and, without being asked, braids her hair into pigtails every morning.
I wanted to be a dad who can braid hair.
Since her preschool days, he's been trying, sometimes struggling, to braid her hair before heading out for work. Now he braids her hair faster and better than I do. Through the kitchen window, I could see our small garden. On my day off last week, Zoe and I planted some bulbs for spring. They were tulip bulbs we got from a local hardware store. We just prepared the flower bed soil and planted them. Nothing more to do until spring. Still, I find myself glancing at the bare garden soil from the small kitchen window out of habit. The day we planted the bulbs, Jake's sister, Michelle, suddenly moved into our neighborhood. She moved in without notifying Jake beforehand, and then came to greet us with her daughter, Sophia.
It's been a while, Kate. We're right nearby. I might be bothering you sometimes, but I look forward to getting along.
Wearing gardening gloves and caught off guard by her unexpected visit, I was bewildered. Jake's displeasure was clear on his face, and he seemed slightly irritated.
Michelle, you could have at least given us a heads up before coming.
Michelle narrowed her eyes slightly. With perfectly groomed hair, she played with a strand and gave Jake an upward glance, smiling.
Hey, can we talk alone for a bit? There are things only siblings can talk about, right?
Jake stared at Michelle for a moment without saying a word, and then it led to him listening to various matters inside the house. I was left feeling confused. So, Sophia's left behind? Seeing her looking bored, I invited her to help plant bulbs in the flower bed with Zoe.
Sorry, Auntie Kate.
Holding the small shovel I handed her, Sophia said this with a slightly sad look on her face. Sophia, for an elementary schooler, had bright brown hair and large eyes. She often dressed stylishly, looking quite like her mom, Michelle, who had long golden hair and a striking appearance. Unlike Zoe and me, who had a calmer look, Sophia wore cheerful, colorful clothes with bright ribbons.
You don't have to apologize. Let's plant these together, okay? When spring comes, we'll have lots of flowers. Yeah, thank you.
Zoe smiled gently and placed a bulb in Sophia's hand. After a moment's thought, Sophia sat on the ground and began digging with the shovel. Once the bulbs were planted in the flower bed, the two of them went home. With a slight, uneasy smile, Jake turned to me and said,
Michelle wants us to watch Sophia tomorrow morning.
Apparently, Michelle, since her divorce, had been under a lot of stress and wanted a break. Jake hadn't gotten all the details though.
My mom and dad spoiled Michelle so much when we were kids. I don't know. She just knows how to get people to help her. I had to put up with it a lot growing up.
And did you just agree to watch her with that good brother smile of yours?
Well, I just couldn't say no.
Well, I'm the one who'll be taking care of her, aren't I? The little brother, still caving to his big sister's demands. Has anything really changed? From that day on, every weekend I wasn't working, Sophia would be dropped off at our house. It was happening so often that I talked to Jake about it, but he took Michelle's side.
Come on. It's tough for her.
I felt a bit frustrated, but I held back too. After all, both their parents had already passed, with Jake and Michelle as each other's only family. I told myself it was right for me to be patient. So, as Sophia started visiting every weekend, I felt our daily routine gradually shifting. I'd prepare breakfast in the morning, glancing at the unchanged flower bed. Feeling a faint unease as our peaceful days slowly lost their color, I began to notice the cause clearly. Jake's attitude had changed since Michelle moved nearby. He'd lost his kindnesses and seemed constantly rushed, a bit colder. Though he works late every night, recently he's been taking his laptop out on his days off too.
I'll go find a quiet spot to work on some projects documents.
We're spending less time together as a family these days. I finally worked up the courage to ask him. Asking this took a lot of bravery on my part. Jake leaves his entire paycheck to me, doesn't smoke or drink, and has no real hobbies. He's always been a kind father who braids Zoe's hair every morning, so if he says he doesn't have time for family, he must really be busy. I didn't know what answer I was hoping for, but I couldn't help but want something that would reassure me.
They've given me a new project at work. I've got more work events to go to. I'm really sorry.
He looked away, his shoulders slumped slightly. In the past, he'd always valued family time despite his limited days off, but now it felt like that time had almost disappeared. With an air of genuine regret, he muttered an apology again.
I'm really sorry.
On weekends, it was as if Michelle was filling in the gaps left in our family time, visiting more frequently with Sophia, wearing her little ribbons.
If you're not going out, you got time, right?
That was her attitude, and she continued to leave Sophia with us more and more. I had no choice but to accept Michelle's whims. But even so, one comfort was seeing Zoe and Sophia playing happily together. I quietly watched them from the living room sofa, where they played right in front of me. The soft sunlight streaming through the window gently illuminated their smiling faces. The two of them sat at the small piano in the corner of the living room, happily pressing the keys.
Sophia, try pressing this white key here.
As Zoe instructed, Sophia's eyes sparkled as she reached out her finger. When a sound played, she smiled joyfully and exclaimed,
I want to do it more.
Zoe smiled proudly and said,
This is a song I learned.
Then she began to play a simple melody with her fingers. Watching them, I felt my heart warm. I recalled when Zoe had started piano lessons at 3 years old. She had been nervous but captivated by the sound of the piano during her first lesson. Now, she was the one teaching Sophia, applying her experience. Seeing her growth was deeply moving.
Now, Sophia, why don't you try playing?
With some hesitation, Sophia placed her fingers on the keys as Zoe encouraged her. As sounds filled the room, Zoe demonstrated.
Here, like this.
Sophia tried to imitate her. Their fingers danced across the keys.
Great job, Sophia. Wow, you're learning so fast.
Sophia laughed bashfully, but seemed to enjoy making sounds at her own pace, little by little. I cherished this moment, grateful to witness their growth. The sound of the piano filled the room, blending with their laughter. I suddenly realized something. For now, there was no shadow of Michelle or the changed demeanor of Jake. I could simply focus on enjoying this peaceful time. The music and laughter from Zoe and Sophia were a source of comfort to me now. As these weekends continued, Sophia grew close to me and began to trust me. At times, she looked up to me almost like a real mother and would often confide her feelings.
Auntie Kate, I'm sorry for always coming over.
Not at all. Zoe seems happy too, and watching you get better at the piano is such a joy. There was no lie in those words. Sophia had a natural talent for the piano. With only a bit of guidance from Zoe and me, her skills improved dramatically. Today, Zoe was away for several hours practicing at her piano class. Sophia, looking a bit lonely, sat in front of the piano, her hands resting on the keys. Carefully pressing each key, it was as if she were trying to convey something with every sound. Sensing a slight sadness in the melody, I walked over, and Sophia looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. What's wrong, Sophia?
I'm sorry, Auntie Kate. There's something I need to apologize for.
My heart fluttered with concern. Sophia was always cheerful and lively in front of Zoe, so what could be bothering her today? As I rubbed her back, I reassured her. It's okay. Then Sophia, through her tears, said to me,
It feels like Mom and Uncle Jake are doing something bad together.
Well, what exactly do you mean by that?
I'm sorry.
Despite feeling both surprised and uneasy, Sophia's sobs became so intense that she couldn't continue speaking. At that moment, I just kept rubbing her back gently. It's okay. Everything's fine. And I didn't bring up the topic again after that. Jake and Michelle doing something bad. It didn't quite make sense to me, so I didn't dwell on it too much. At the time, my mind was filled with thoughts about Zoe's upcoming piano recital. Last month, Zoe's piano teacher had invited her to participate in a recital, her first one since she started piano lessons at 3. For the big day, we even went to a salon for the first time to get her ready. In a rare moment, when Sophia wasn't with us, the three of us went dress shopping together. We got into the car, drove to a large shopping mall, and browsed multiple stores.
Mom, Dad. Come on, hurry.
Zoe, usually so calm, was a bit more excited than usual. She kept asking me in the car,
I wonder what kind of dresses they'll have.
"What color do you want, Zoe?"
Light blue. Like the sky.
Without hesitation, Zoe answered. We browsed several stores, searching for a light blue dress that would be perfect for her.
Oh, this one. I want this one.
Pointing at a dress that sparkled under the light, Zoe's eyes shone brightly. We asked a store assistant, and she took it to the fitting room to try it on. When Zoe came out, she looked a bit shy, with a face that tried to hide her overflowing smile. She looked absolutely adorable. Zoe chose that light blue dress, and with a beaming smile, she told Jake and me,
Thank you. I'll do my best at the recital.
Imagining her standing alone on stage in her chosen dress for her piano recital made my eyes misty. But there was no worry. Zoe would be just fine. Her innocent smile was filled with confidence. Back home, as I stood in the kitchen, I looked out the small window at the empty flower bed. I sincerely hoped her piano recital would go well. A few days later, as the big day approached, Zoe was eagerly preparing. But on the weekend right before the recital, that peace was suddenly shattered.
Mom. Help.
I was hanging laundry when I heard Zoe's panicked cry. Startled, I dropped the slightly damp towel I was holding onto the floor. I rushed toward the sound of her voice, only to find Zoe crying, while Jake looked down at her. Michelle was also there, having likely dropped by as usual to leave Sophia with us, and in her hand, she clutched a dress as if it were a trophy. That dress, it was the one we'd bought for Zoe's piano recital. Why was Michelle holding it? Feeling puzzled, I asked, "What's wrong, Zoe?" Through her tears, Zoe's voice trembled as she said,
Dad gave my dress to Sophia.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Looking up, I saw Jake avoiding my gaze, looking visibly uncomfortable. What? Jake, what's going on here?
Well, I just thought Sophia should get a chance to wear a dress too.
As I pressed for answers, Jake mumbled, trying to explain himself. Michelle, feigning innocence, held onto the shoulder of the dress, examining its decorations. Just as I was about to say something out of irritation at both Jake's attitude and Michelle's behavior, Sophia tugged hard on Michelle's sleeve.
Mom? Stop it. Give Zoe her dress back.
Why? Your uncle gave it to you as a gift, didn't he? Isn't that right, Jake?
Michelle turned to Jake, who looked slightly flustered and hesitated.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
This can't be happening. That dress was bought just the other day for Zoe. How did it turn into something to be given to Sophia? Sophia stepped away from Michelle and rushed to my side, looking up at me with a pleading, slightly frightened expression.
Mom told Uncle Jake to take Zoe's dress and bring it.
Sophia's voice was desperate as she shouted. As I grasped the meaning of her words, a cold feeling settled in my chest. Michelle smiled calmly, as if this were all perfectly reasonable.
Well, I just wanted Sophia to have the dress to wear too.
To her, it seemed there was nothing wrong with this at all. Ignoring the fact that Zoe was still crying, she gently patted Sophia's head and said,
Look, Sophia, isn't this dress just perfect on you? It really suits your pretty face.
Sophia didn't react, instead looking more confused.
But it's my dress.
Zoe shouted, her voice rising. Michelle glanced at her for a moment.
But look, doesn't it look much brighter and prettier on Sophia?
Michelle laughed mockingly and pressed the dress against Sophia's shoulders. Her tone was full of disdain, directed right at Zoe.
Your face is a little plain. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think this dress is more suited for Sophia.
Zoe's eyes filled with tears, and seeing this, anger welled up inside me. Michelle, that's really uncalled for.
Okay, do you not like what I'm saying? But this is reality. This dress should be given to the cuter ones, don't you think?
If I responded here, it might escalate into a fight. I turned to look at Jake, and he looked pale and silent.
So, is Zoe crying because she couldn't get the dress after all?
Zoe shook her head.
No, Dad. I'm sad because my dress was taken from me.
Wouldn't you agree that Sophia looks cuter in the dress than Zoe does? Or does Zoe think you're cuter than Sophia? Do you think Sophia is somehow less than you?
Jake, why are you saying it like that?
I can confidently say Sophia is cuter. I want to give cute dresses to cute girls. That's only natural, right? Am I thinking about this the wrong way?
Michelle's tone grew more forceful, as if she had won some decisive victory.
But I don't even want the dress.
I looked quietly at Sophia. She was struggling. She was caught, unable to stop her mom and Jake from going too far.
I just want to play with Zoe.
Michelle's eyes widened in surprise as she responded.
Sophia, what are you saying?
She threw her arms wide theatrically, looking up at the ceiling. What am I even witnessing here?
Wearing a dress is something special. You need to have more confidence. Don't hold back. If someone offers you something, you absolutely take it. Got it?
Michelle shot a glare at Jake. Why can't Jake ever stand up to her? As pathetic as it felt to be disappointed in my own husband, Jake's next words, even under Michelle's influence, were utterly unforgivable.
It's true. Sophia does look better in that dress than Zoe does.
The moment he said that, looking down at Zoe, time stopped for me. His voice echoed as though he had poured ice-cold water over my entire being. Zoe, whom I had loved since her baby years, my dearest treasure, the most beautiful and cherished person in my world. To insult her was to insult me. Zoe's little face turned into a sorrowful expression. Thank you for everything up until now. I took Zoe's hand and said this blankly, beginning to head upstairs to pack. Anger and sadness swirled within me. Zoe, realizing my determination, gave a small nod and prepared herself as well, glancing back at Jake.
Goodbye, Dad.
With that, we began making preparations to leave together. As we walked out of the house, Michelle's laughter echoed behind us. But neither Zoe nor I stopped. We walked away without looking back, determined to step into a new future. It hadn't even been 10 minutes as we walked toward the station when my phone rang. Jake's name on the screen. My heart pounded. "It's your dad," I told Zoe before answering. "Hello."
What the hell is going on?
Jake's angry voice burst from the speaker, his tone filled with clear distress and rage. For a moment, I was speechless, trying to process the situation, imagining him on the other end, raking his hands through his hair in frustration.
Right after you left, my boss called to tell me I've been fired. What's going on, Kate?
As his words hit me, I struggled to make sense of it all. Fired? Why? And why now? But why?
Just after you walked out, my boss called saying I'm terminated. Do you know anything about this?
His accusatory question hung heavily in my mind. I recalled the conversation I had with Sophia a few days ago, her solemn face when she confided in me.
It feels like Mom and Uncle Jake are doing something bad together.
At that moment, I had suspected Jake and Michelle were involved in something shady. Anxious and uncertain, I had reached out to a private investigator, despite the strain it put on my savings. I felt that asking Jake directly wouldn't get me any real answers. He always took Michelle's side, and I'd likely just be brushed off. It seemed more effective to investigate quietly and find out what secrets they might be hiding. I was scared and nervous. Were they involved in something illegal? I worried about that until I finally received the results from the investigator. And just days ago, the investigator revealed the truth. Jake had been having an affair. But he'd chosen the wrong person to betray me with.
The investigator reported it to the company. Who else would order an investigation on me, huh? You knew, didn't you? You knew who I was involved with.
Yes, Jake had been unfaithful. Moreover, it turned out to be an affair on both sides. His partner in the affair also had a family. To make matters worse, the woman was the daughter of the CEO of one of Jake's company's clients, and I knew that if this scandal came to light, it would harm the company as well. I used my savings to hire a detective. You weren't busy with work. You were lying and cheating on me, weren't you? I sensed a dead silence on Jake's end. My words must have hit him deeply, making him realize the gravity of his actions. I shifted the phone in my hand and began explaining the complicated situation. Initially, I hadn't suspected an affair. I just couldn't shake the unease after what Sophia had told me and wanted to clear my mind. When the investigation revealed his affair, I didn't know what to do. I reached out to the husband of Jake's affair partner, explaining the situation, and he was furious. He insisted on sending the investigation report to Jake's company. I never imagined that today, right after I left the house, it would reach your company. My voice trembled. Everything was spiraling out of control. Not only was his affair wrecking both families, but it was also destroying Jake's career. I was witnessing the lives of so many people unraveling due to my actions.
Because of you, I've lost everything. Don't think this ends here.
This isn't my fault. You chose this path yourself. As I retorted, a mix of anger and sadness stirred inside me, shaken by the harsh words he was spewing at me through the phone. With the cold wind brushing my cheeks, Zoe and I hurried down the path to the station. It felt like winter was just around the corner, the air growing colder. I held my phone, still connected to Jake, who had fallen silent, and could hear the faint sounds of him moving. Most likely, he didn't want Michelle to overhear what he was about to say, so he kept quiet.
Kate, listen, it's all my sister's fault.
Michelle's fault. Why isn't this your responsibility? You're the one who had the affair.
Actually,
I replied calmly, prompting Jake to lower his voice, clearly preparing for a confession. Once we passed through the station gates, I sat on a bench and handed Zoe some change, gesturing for her to get a drink. She nodded and walked toward the vending machines, contemplating her choice.
just before Michelle moved nearby, I offered to help her move as a friendly gesture. That's when I met one of her friends. And as I helped them organize the apartment, we hit it off.
So, her friend had that flashy style that caught your eye, huh? A cold fury rose within me. I couldn't just sit and listen as Jake described how his affair began. The investigation had already provided me with the details. The woman's name, her face, where they'd been together. Imagining him strolling through town with that woman, even though I'd seen her photo, made me sick to my stomach. My mind was already leaning toward our ending. And the incident with the dress had been the final straw.
Michelle told me you were the one having an affair, Kate.
Jake's voice quivered. Me? Having an affair? Every weekday, I worked part-time as a dressmaker, spending my weekends at home. The workplace was mostly women, with few men around. Some days, I didn't talk to any men other than Jake.
I was so shaken. I wanted to trust you, but I couldn't muster the courage to ask, and my doubts wouldn't go away.
So, you're saying that's why you cheated?
I got invited out for a drink. Normally, I would have said no. But at that time, I thought, if you're enjoying yourself with someone else, then why shouldn't I?
Jake tried to explain, claiming it was supposed to be just a night out. He went on to explain, saying he regretted letting the atmosphere get to him and making a terrible mistake.
I was set up by Michelle. She used it against me to manipulate me, asking for money and trying to control me.
I couldn't stand Jake's attempts to blame his actions on someone else. I didn't know why Michelle would lie to Jake, telling him I was unfaithful. I could sympathize with the pain he went through from that lie. But crossing the line was his own choice, no matter the reasons. He had to take responsibility for that. Jake's voice broke as he pleaded,
I'm the victim here. Forgive me. I'll change my mind.
"The only one who sees themselves as a victim is you." I said this calmly, standing up from the bench. Zoe, having finished her juice, came over to my side. The sky was overcast, and the cold air hinted at the arrival of winter. An announcement about the approaching train broke the silence, and a few people leaned forward in anticipation. "The original cause lies with you. You're the one who chose to prioritize your affair and Michelle over your family."
Kate, please, just one more chance.
Desperation colored Jake's voice. I wanted him to stop sounding so pathetic.
Are you really going to leave me? What about Zoe? Won't she be lonely? Am I never going to braid her hair again? Doesn't she need me?
A few pigeons rested quietly in the corner of the platform. Sensing the incoming train, they suddenly flew away, their wings flapping. As a calm silence returned, I replied, You're incredibly cowardly."
Isn't Zoe nearby? Please, let her hear me. Doesn't she want me around? Isn't she wearing that cute braid today? Could you do that for her?
The train approached from the left. As it passed the yellow safety line, it slowed to a stop. Watching the passengers disembark, Zoe stepped onto the train before me. Then, turning back, she reached up and undid her braid, shaking her head to loosen the curls left behind. She extended her hand to me, saying,
Mom, let's get on.
"Zoe, your braid."
I always hated it. Waiting every morning for him to finish was annoying. I feel better now.
Though I knew it wasn't her true feeling, I understood that it was her way of being kind to me. Taking a step forward, I boarded the train. Since talking on the phone isn't allowed, I took the phone away from my ear. "Goodbye, Jake. Walk the path you chose." With my own actions, I ended our life together. Everything has disappeared. Jake's kind face, his voice, his feelings, all gone.
Mom,
Zoe took my hand. A gentle breeze flowed through the still open doors of the train, slightly lifting her hair, forcing a smile to hide my anxiety from her. I realized it wasn't just for her. I had to look forward for myself too. Later, I arranged to meet Michelle. Not out of sympathy for Jake, but because I had always wanted to confront her directly, knowing she might be the mastermind behind it all. I knew I'd regret it if I didn't. Sitting on a park bench, I waited nervously. Soon, Michelle appeared, dressed in her usual flashy attire, exuding confidence as always.
Why did you call me out here?
"I have something to discuss with you." I tried to speak firmly, ready to release the frustrations that had been building up inside me.
Oh, here to blame me again?
Michelle smirked, covering her mouth, and then burst into exaggerated laughter.
If Jake cheated on you, that's hardly my fault.
"I can't forgive you for lying to Jake and destroying our family."
Are you blaming me just to cover your own shortcomings? Jake's affair was the result of your neglect.
Michelle's words were intended to provoke me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure.
Hiring a private investigator to dig into his affair, you practically ruined your own life.
I also submitted the investigation results to the local authorities. Michelle tilted her head slightly, not understanding. The sky was darkening, with rain imminent.
Authorities? What are you talking about?
Along with Jake's investigation, I also had you investigated, Michelle. Her eyes widened. I had hired the detective to investigate not only Jake, but also Michelle. After all, Sophia had told me.
Mom and Uncle Jake are doing something bad.
Michelle's actions hadn't seemed suspicious. Despite being a single mother, she likely had a boyfriend. Nothing unusual about that. However, this boyfriend was visiting her place so often it was practically cohabitation. Did you know? To qualify for single mother support, certain conditions need to be met. After receiving the detective's report, I submitted it to the appropriate authorities. She was practically living with a man who, though an ordinary worker, was likely financially supporting her. Additionally, she not only left Sophia with me, but also frequently left her alone at the apartment at night, indulging in a fixation with hosts. Based on this information, they might conduct an investigation. If you've been receiving benefits under false pretenses, you might be asked to pay it all back. Michelle's face turned pale. At that moment, I made a decision. I would no longer let this woman control my life. The heavy, dark clouds above were on the verge of releasing rain. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Don't ruin my life. I stood up, looking at Michelle as she sat there, stunned. The rain began to fall in droplets. I took a folding umbrella from my bag and handed it to her. Take it or you'll catch a cold. I walked away, leaving Michelle on the bench, staring blankly. My heart wasn't entirely at ease. But this was the end of my conflict with Michelle. I resolved to take this first step toward reclaiming my own happiness. A few months passed, and as winter began to ease, I prepared for a fresh start. The divorce with Jake, initially met with his resistance, gradually proceeded as he grew unnaturally quiet, almost as if accepting his choice. I assumed he had plans to marry his affair partner and perhaps hoped for an advantageous outcome. But those hopes didn't pan out. His affair partner, it turned out, wasn't as serious about him as he'd thought. After our divorce, Jake lost his jobs, family, and girlfriend. Michelle, too, was found to have squandered the child support she received from her ex-husband on host club expenses, along with the money Jake had given her. On top of that, she had been dating multiple men simultaneously. Due to the investigation by the authorities, she was now being asked to repay the financial aid she had received unlawfully. Frankly, both siblings were the worst. What remained on my mind, though, was Sophia. I was concerned about her living situation with Michelle, but it seemed that her father had decided to take custody of her. Apparently, Michelle had been reported for neglect after leaving Sophia home alone frequently, and her ex-husband, upon learning of the situation, had stepped up to take her in. Knowing Sophia's circumstances, I didn't feel sadness. Because
I'm here.
Sophia's cheerful voice echoed at the entrance. Zoe and I had moved to a new place, which happened to be close to where Sophia now lived with her father. Zoe and Sophia had always been close cousins, and even though Jake and I were divorced, I had no intention of tearing apart their bond. Zoe had started taking piano lessons again in her new school, and Sophia had also become interested in piano. They now encouraged and challenged each other to improve. As for myself, I had found a full-time position at a different location of the sewing company where I'd previously worked part-time. I resolved to work not only for my family, but also for my own dreams. A quiet hope began to grow within me. Zoe and Sophia might perform a piano piece wearing dresses I'd sewn for them. Looking out of the window in my new kitchen, I caught a glimpse of the slightly warmer spring scenery outside. My mind suddenly thought of the tulips I planted in the house where I lived with Jake last winter. I wondered if those bulbs had blossomed, but I'd never know. In the peaceful living room, I set up my sewing machine, finding comfort in the sound of the needle stitching fabric. Soft light streamed in from the window, enveloping the room in warmth, and I looked up. In the corner of the room, Sophia sat attentively at the old piano.
I can almost play this song now, Zoe. Just listen to it for a minute. Okay. You'll try it.
Sophia's fingers touched the keys and sound filled the room. The note started a bit awkwardly, but soon a melody began to emerge. It was a part of Bach's Minuet. Her right hand glided lightly over the keys, bringing out the melody, while her fingers moved elegantly across the keyboard, with occasional support from her left hand providing the harmony. She maintained the balance beautifully.
Wow! You've gotten so good with just a little practice.
Zoe said, her voice filled with excitement. Sophia blushed a bit, continuing to play with a focused expression. Her fingers bounced to the rhythm, moving smoothly as though she was bringing the music from within her heart to life. As I continued working on the sewing machine, I watched Sophia's serious expression and felt warmth spread through me. Time passed with the music, deepening the bond between them.
Oh! There's going to be a piano recital soon. Mom, that's what this flyer is for.
Sophia's fingers danced over the keys, her face lighting up as she immersed herself in the music. Zoe handed me a paper with details about the recital. The location, a community hall near a national park.
Our teacher said there's a park near the venue with tons of blooming tulips.
I paused the sewing machine and looked at Zoe. I can no longer check if the tulips I planted have bloomed. But I can be here, watching this child, watching Zoe's future so closely. I can hold her hand and walk forward with her. I can watch Zoe's smile and Sophia's growth. That is a truly joyful thing. Yes, that sounds very exciting. In my heart, a quiet hope for the arrival of spring had indeed begun to bloom.
It was such an unbelievable situation that I was beyond angry, and I was just stunned. My boyfriend, Mark, and I have known each other since our college days. Even after graduation, we stayed in touch, but Mark and I were strictly just friends. It wasn't until recently that our relationship turned romantic. Mark suddenly started seeing me differently, and before I knew it, he proposed to me. I didn't dislike Mark. In fact, I even thought it might be nice to be in a relationship with him. But then came our wedding day. Mark's mother, Karen, had once dressed his ex-girlfriend, Sarah, in a wedding gown when they were dating during his high school years. I was left speechless. The unbelievable part was that Mark looked happy to see Sarah dressed like that. His parents even said,
"We always wanted him to marry Sarah."
His ex-girlfriend, Sarah, chimed in.
"Come on, it's not fair to your future daughter-in-law."
Not entirely dismissing the idea, Sarah glanced at me with a smirk. It made me so angry that I tried to take my parents home. But just as I was about to, my parents suggested something. My name is Linda Thompson. I'm a 40-year-old office worker and still single. I have a best friend, a guy named Mark Stone, whom I met in college. Mark is a man, but he's one of my closest friends. My female friends often tease me, saying, "You two are definitely dating, right? Or you act like a couple. Or you're really in love, aren't you?" But I've never seen Mark as anything more than a friend. Mark is a great guy. I'm sure he'd treat a woman with care. But to me, he's just one of my friends. When I asked Mark about it, he was clear. "I don't see you as a girlfriend either." So we spent our 20s and early 30s just being friends. But that changed when Mark said something unexpected.
"I think it's time for me to get married. I'm serious. I'm at a good age. I want kids, and I want to give my parents some peace of mind.
Really? So, do you have someone in mind? What is she like?
Yeah, it's you.
What?
I want to marry you.
Wait? No way. I was completely stunned. After that, I started to think about Mark in a different way. I never really planned on staying single, but Mark, that's a bit unexpected. Still, he's always been kind to women, and I'm sure we get along well as a couple. I've known him for so long, but I never imagined he was thinking about this. Well, that makes sense. We're both turning 40, and my parents are eager to see some grandkids. Maybe it's time to say goodbye to being single. I wonder what Karen will say. I know her, but introducing myself as the future daughter-in-law, that's nerve-wracking. After that, Mark and I officially became a couple and started by living together. Once we got used to living together, we decided to meet each other's parents. Today is the day I'm meeting Mark's parents. I'm so grateful for everything Mark has done for me.
Oh my, Linda, come on in. Though I must say, I can already see how this will turn out. But if you're okay with that, please come in.
Outcome? What outcome is she talking about? Of course, Karen knows who I am, and I've spoken with her before. So there's no reason to be overly nervous, but when it comes to marriage, I can't help but feel jittery. But when I walked into the living room, I was shocked. Mark had already informed his parents about our engagement. So I knew they would be there, but there was a woman I didn't recognize in the room. Mark doesn't have any sisters. So who could she be? A cousin? A relative? As Mark continued to talk casually, I assumed she must be a relative. Then Karen turned to Mark and said,
Mark, I'm sorry, Linda, but don't you think Sarah here is a better match than some woman like her? Sarah is thoughtful and considerate. I can't approve of a marriage to someone who's been all over the place.
I was stunned. What? Sarah, who is this woman, really? She's encouraging Mark to marry her, so she's not a relative, and calling me someone who's been all over the place, right in front of me. I'm not a player. And if I were, why did they even allow us to live together?
Mark, marry me. I can cook way better than she can.
Sarah, the woman, smiled sweetly. If Mark had been the kind of guy who could firmly reject her right then, I wouldn't have felt so bewildered or upset. But instead, Mark grinned and said,
Well, this is quite the dilemma. I guess I'm a pretty popular guy. Oh, Linda, did I introduce you? This is my ex, Sarah. We dated back in middle and high school.
What? I mean, sure, Mark has his charms, but weren't we here to announce our engagement? Why is his ex-girlfriend just casually here? What is this? This is just a ridiculous farce. Not to mention, he proposed to me. Why is his ex even here like it's no big deal? I just can't wrap my head around this. Didn't they break up so that he could be with me? What's going on here? My head was spinning. I wasn't angry at Sarah so much as I was baffled by Mark's family for accepting her presence so easily. Well, Mark, we are getting married, right? I asked Mark, who was sitting beside me, trying to keep my voice calm.
Oh, right. Mom, Dad, I'm marrying Linda.
Why not Sarah? She's prettier and she's a better cook too. I'm sorry, Linda, but you should marry Sarah. I'm really rooting for her.
I see.
Did he say I see? Mark, get a grip. I was screaming inside at this ridiculous conversation between Mark and his parents. In the end, the conversation didn't revolve around the future of Mark and me, but rather whether he should choose me or Sarah. Naturally, Mark didn't give a clear answer, leaving me feeling uneasy and frustrated. On the way home, I confronted Mark. "Seriously? I took the day off work to meet your parents because we're getting married, but why did your ex end up being the star of the show?"
Come on, don't worry. I'm with you.
Unbelievable. I knew you could be indecisive, but your ex. And what's wrong with your parents? If they're so keen on your ex, why did they even let us live together? I couldn't calm down. I was furious. On my next day off, I told Mark I'm just going out for a bit to do some shopping and left him watching TV as I headed to my parents' houses. My parents know Mark well. I told them about what happened at his parents' place the other day. So that's the story, I said, munching on some snacks as I explained the situation to my retired parents. Isn't that crazy? Or am I the one who's crazy? What do you think?
Yeah, that's unbelievable. If that's how it is, what was the point of letting you two live together?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I instantly reacted to my mom's understanding words. Then, as I was leaving, my dad, who had been quietly listening, said,
"Leave it to me."
After that, Sarah kept coming to our apartment, trying to force meetings with Mark and even bringing homemade food, insisting on coming inside. Since I work a desk job, I usually get home earlier, so I was able to stop Sarah. But her attempts became more aggressive day by day, and eventually, for some reason, Mark gave her a spare key. I really can't understand this. Sarah comes into our home whenever she wants, cooks meals, and even washes Mark's clothes. It's like she's playing the role of his live-in girlfriend. Stop coming in here without my permission. I finally reached my breaking point one day and yelled at Sarah. Then she started crying.
I'm Mark's future wife. Why do I have to be pushed aside? You're just his girlfriend, and you think you can live with him.
She's calling herself his wife when they're not even married yet. This makes me look like the bad guy. What's unbelievable is that Sarah kept quietly sobbing until Mark got home. And when he did, she threw herself into his arms and cried even harder. Mark didn't seem entirely unhappy about it as he tried to calm her down. What is this? What am I witnessing? Should I just cancel our cohabitation and move out? No, I need to trust Mark. I believe he'll choose me in the end. He's just getting caught up with his ex for now. It would be silly to run away from this. I won't lose. So, despite Sarah's constant advances, Mark and I continued with our wedding preparations. The wedding was supposed to be a grand affair, with both families splitting the costs. I had tried on my wedding dress, planned the bouquet design, and prepared everything to my satisfaction. I thought that by getting this far, Sarah would finally step back. That's what I believed. Then came the wedding day. I arrived at the venue with my parents, ready to prepare, only to find Sarah wearing the wedding dress I had chosen. What the hell?
First come, first served. Marrying Mark. Let's get married.
If you love me that much.
Mark, with a joyful expression, walked over to Sarah. I've been with Mark for a long time. This is a huge betrayal. The thought that my parents had spent their money on this farce left me speechless with shame. Dad and Mom, let's go home. It looks like there's already a bride here, and apparently that's what Mark prefers. I'm so sorry for dragging you into this charade. I tried to take my parents' hands to leave, but my dad held onto mine.
"Leave the rest to me and stay at my place. Go get your things from the apartment you shared, and then let me handle everything."
I didn't quite understand my dad's intentions, but I did as he said and got into a taxi. I had the taxi wait while I quickly gathered my belongings from the apartment and then returned to my parents' house. Being back home felt comforting. There's no way Sarah could come here. Home is where I find peace. It's so much better than that shared apartment. Exhausted by everything, I fell asleep on the couch. I was awakened by the sound of my parents coming home, laughing heartily. "You're back late. So how did the wedding go?" Then, unable to contain her giggles, my mom showed me a video. "What's this video?"
Your dad got revenge for you. Just watch it. You'll feel better.
The video was of Mark and Sarah's wedding, a nightmare I thought I had escaped. But instead of a joyful atmosphere, the video showed Mark being scolded by the wedding guests.
Why is the bride's name different?
You said you were marrying Linda.
What's going on? Explain yourself.
Well, the bride's name was written down wrong.
Do you really expect us to believe that? Are you blaming the venue staff now? You can't just shift the blame and get away with this.
The guests pressed Mark, and even the MC tried to calm them down, but it's not normal to mix up the bride's name. That's why the guests were so upset. Mark then tried to pacify the crowd and continue the ceremony. Quite the nerve, Mark. But then a slideshow of photos made by Mark's friends started playing, and once again the guests erupted. "Hey, what's going on? The woman in these photos isn't the same." Of course, there wasn't a single photo of Sarah. Despite this, the wedding continued. Then my dad confidently took the microphone and stepped forward.
Well, today, we're celebrating Sarah, who has taken my daughter's place as the bride. Congratulations, Sarah. And it seems Mark has chosen Sarah over my daughter, Linda. Now, let me share with everyone here the situation between these two.
The guests started murmuring, confused by what was going on. Everyone had their phones out, recording my dad.
First, let's talk about the bride, Sarah. You have a debt of $200,000, and you're planning to make Mark and his parents pay it off, aren't you? Normally, no one would allow such a thing, but it seems Mark, who can't see through Sarah's intentions, is completely clueless. And this debt, it appears, was all spent on another man. The groom's mother, who called Linda a player, doesn't even know who the real player is. Not to mention, Sarah is a top hostess in the nightlife business, and she's been involved in questionable activities to secure clients. Sarah, whose child are you carrying in your womb?
At that, Mark looked at Sarah in shock. Sarah averted her eyes.
And Mark, the groom, has been a regular at the casino, racking up a debt of $50,000, which he's been making Linda pay off. And not just on his own. He's also been borrowing money from his parents to cover it. What a lucky bride you are, Sarah, to have such a husband. Linda, who was supposed to be the bride today, went home with a broken heart. How do you all feel about this?
At that point, the friends and relatives from my side of the family started shouting.
What a scumbag. I wouldn't marry him if you paid me.
A perfect match of a couple drowning in debt.
You two should get out of here.
What a ridiculous farce this whole day has been.
Let's all go home, everyone. There's no point in staying at a wedding like this.
With that final comment, the guests from the bride's side began to leave in droves. Mark tried to stop them, but no one listened. The groom's guests then crowded around Mark, demanding answers. The video ended with the sound of Sarah crying echoing through the venue. Well, that's right. Dad can be really scary when you're on his bad side. After all, he's the head of a detective agency with his own network of information, and even some politicians are afraid of him. I was reminded of my dad's power. Now he was sitting at the dining table, casually dressed in his usual clothes, reading the newspaper as if nothing had happened.
Your dad asked our relatives and your friends to throw in those jeers and put on a bit of a show. Everyone is on your side. Honestly, I can't believe Mark's family would choose a woman like Sarah. They must be out of their minds. Your dad, our relatives, and all the guests here are on your side. So don't worry. It's a good thing this happened before you got married. It might be tough to claim any compensation, but your dad made sure to get revenge for you.
Tears welled up in my eyes. They were tears of joy. When I glanced at my phone, I saw messages of concern from friends and relatives. I carefully responded to each one with a heartfelt thank you.
Mark won't be able to stay at his company anymore. Honestly, what was he thinking? Inviting his boss and colleagues, and then switching the bride. It's his own fault. He deserves no sympathy.
That's true. For a while, I commuted to work from my parents' house. Some of my coworkers expressed concern, but I reassured them with, "I'm fine. Sorry for worrying you." Then, on one of my days off, Mark and Karen came to our houses. My mom silently sent Mark and Karen into the living room, but didn't offer them tea. Instead, she called my dad from his study. Once my parents and I, along with Mark and Karen, were all gathered, our conversation began.
Well, could we have some tea?
Oh, I don't think you're in any position to be asking for that.
My mom shot back at Karen's request.
Mark, don't you have something to say to Linda that's more important than tea?
With gentle prompting from my dad, Mark quickly apologized.
Linda, I was wrong. Please give me another chance. I got carried away with Sarah and ended up neglecting you. I know it's unforgivable, but I'm truly sorry. Please, I want to marry you. I'm begging you.
We've already kicked Sarah out. Linda, I'm so sorry. You're the better wife for Mark. We realize now that you're the one who truly deserves him. So please, come back.
The nerve of these two making such self-serving demands. I had a lot on my mind. Mark.
Linda, please, let's start over.
How about you pay back all the money I helped you with for your gambling debts? I covered a lot of that, remember?
What? Now? I don't have that kind of money anymore.
Even a child knows you have to repay what you borrow.
Come on, don't be so harsh.
Living with you was hell. I kept telling myself that it was because I was going to be your wife, but I lost half of my savings helping you pay off your debts. And yet you never even said thank you. Not marrying you was the best decision I ever made. Go ahead and live your life drowning in debt with your ex, Sarah.
But don't say that. We've been together for almost 20 years.
And who gave your ex, Sarah, a spare key while we were living together? Do you have any idea how cornered that made me feel? Sure, Sarah might be good at cooking and cleaning, but a $200,000 debt? That's impressive. Well, enjoy living in debt together, and don't forget to pay back every cent of the money I covered for you. And that's not a request. It's a demand.
A demand? Come on, I know I messed up. I'm really sorry. So, can you just help me out a little?
Don't you dare talk nonsense.
It was then that my dad snapped. He had been a martial artist in his younger days, so his angry voice carried a lot of weight. Even Mark and I fell silent under the intensity of his outburst.
Your debt is your own doing. You're an adult. Figure it out yourself. And don't ever touch Linda's savings again. You kicked out that woman, Sarah? Well, that's just basic decency. What on earth are you thinking? If you can't live without relying on others, then go ahead and live a life at rock bottom. And don't ever step foot in this house again. Get out.
Mark and Karen turned pale as my dad's shouts filled the room. My mom stood up and firmly directed them to leave.
Well,
Do you still need something? You're not even family, just strangers.
Hearing that, Mark and Karen hung their heads and left. I turned to my dad and thanked him. "Dad, thank you,"
I didn't do anything at all.
he said with a smile, and I smiled back. After that, I sent the spare key to the apartment back to Mark, signaling that I never wanted to see him again. But then, someone unexpected reached out to me. After work, I returned home to find that my parents were out grocery shopping at a distant store. I was alone, so I decided to call the friends and relatives who had supported me during the wedding fiasco to thank them again. That's when it happened. A call came in from an unknown number. It wasn't unusual for me to get calls from unknown numbers due to my job, so I picked it up without thinking. "Hello."
How could you?
"Excuse me?"
How could you do this to me?
The voice on the other end was a woman, crying and shouting. I realized who it was: Sarah. I could guess how she got my number. She probably asked Mark or someone around him. "What are you talking about? Who is this?"
Thanks to you, the wedding is off. It's all ruined. I was kicked out of my houses. How am I supposed to live now? I have debts and I'm pregnant. I was supposed to have a life with Mark. How could you do this to me? Pay me compensation. Give me alimony. Just give me some money.
I was the one who got left at the altar because of you. Do you really think you have the right to demand anything from me? Don't you think it's a bit shameless? You're acting like a child.
What? Because of you, I've been cut off from my family. Your dad wrote a letter to my parents. How could you do that? My parents were my last hope, and now I have nothing. You're a horrible woman, the worst.
Isn't the real horrible woman you? Acting like a spoiled child, throwing a tantrum. How embarrassing. I heard you're 40, right? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Even a child knows how to apologize, but you can't even manage that. It's you who lacks any sense of decency.
Shut up. It's all your fault. I was supposed to marry Mark and live happily ever after. Now all I have left are debts and a child. It's all your fault.
The noise was too much, so I hung up the phone. Then I blocked the number. A little while later, the landline rang. I had a bad feeling about this, but it could be one of my dad's friends. Since retiring from his job as a detective agency head, he's taken up golf with his buddies as a hobby. So I picked up the phone. "Hello."
Who do you think you are hanging up on me? Are you planning to run away? I knew you were nothing but a bad woman.
It was Sarah. I could have hung up again, but I felt like I needed to settle this once and for all.
You homewrecker. You've ruined my life, turned everything dark. You owe me compensation. Just give me money. I know you've got savings. Just hand it over.
Her words were all over the place, but I still responded. "Why should I give you my savings? Think about it calmly. You're the one who interfered with Mark and me. What's with that first come, first served nonsense? You're acting like the tragic heroine, but if anyone's the victim here, it's me. Anyway, you're not getting any money from me.
Shut up. I could come over there and storm into your house. Don't think you'll get away with this. You don't know how scary I can be when I'm mad, do you? This is all your fault for seducing Mark. He was supposed to marry me.
Her ranting made no sense and I was bewildered. But I didn't know how to block calls on the landline. What should I do with this call? Time was just slipping away. Look, I've suffered because of you too. Where's my apology? Not that I'm expecting one from someone who can't even act like an adult. I'm not asking for some fancy gift, just a simple apology. Can't you manage that? And let's not forget, you're the one who dumped Mark in high school. So why am I the one being accused of stealing him?
How dare you? What gives you the right to say that? Fine, then give me a baby gift. Just hand over the money. I'm so sick of being chased by debt collectors.
Normally, baby gifts come after the baby is born. Asking for it up front is pretty rude, don't you think? If you're that desperate for money, why not seek help from a nonprofit organization or some government assistance?
I don't care. I want an apology and money from you. That's it.
Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. It was my dad who took the receiver from my hand. Dad?
Leave this to me.
At some point, my parents had come home, putting their shopping bags in the kitchen. I'd been so absorbed in the call that I didn't notice. My mom waved me over to the kitchen, so I followed her.
That woman, Sarah, right? Let your dad handle it. Help me put these groceries away.
Oh, okay. I left the phone to my dad and helped prepare dinner. 2 hours later, my dad finally hung up, looking thoroughly fed up. How did it go?
She ranted about a lot of things, so I mentioned taking legal action. She's a persistent one, that's for sure. She's still holding a grudge about the letter I sent to her parents. We should all be careful for a while. Maybe I'll talk to a friend of mine on the police force.
Thanks, Dad. I was worried, but I followed my dad's advice. Then, late that night, it happened. I was in my room, my parents were in theirs. I started to drift off to sleep. I was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass. I jumped up and ran to my mom's room first. Mom.
Linda, are you okay?
It sounds like it came from downstairs. I'll go check.
My dad, who had rushed into my mom's room, headed downstairs. I heard his voice and a woman's voice, so I went down with my mom.
How dare you? You stole my happiness, you homewrecker.
When I reached the living room and saw the scene, my blood ran cold. A brick lay on the floor. One of the glass doors had been completely shattered. And there she was, Sarah. She was clearly out of her mind. It looked like she had forced her way in, and my dad was trying to stop her rampage, stepping on broken glass as he did.
Call the police. This is insane. She's completely lost it. Hurry. Call 911.
Yes.
Let go of me. I'll curse Linda. Where's that homewrecker who stole my happiness?
My mom followed my dad's command. I couldn't believe what Sarah had done, and I walked toward her, stepping on the broken glass myself. Then, with all my strength, I slapped her across the face. Who's the homewrecker now? As I yelled, I heard the sound of police sirens approaching. Sarah, stunned from the slap, started crying uncontrollably. Through the broken frame of the glass door, I could see neighbors gathering outside. Soon after, Sarah was handcuffed and pushed into a police car. arrested for various charges. My dad handled the situation, explaining everything to the police officers. The incident even made the news. Apparently, reporters swarmed Mark's house after the event. We didn't press charges against Sarah, but we didn't help her either. Later, Sarah's parents came personally to apologize, and they hired a glass repair company to fix the door, bringing the incident to a close.
To think she would do something like that. The world's really gone mad.
My dad, a former martial artist, still had his strength even after retiring. If my parents had been weaker people, it's terrifying to think what Sarah might have done to them. This was an event that showed just how dangerous a woman's jealousy can be. Sarah was later sentenced to prison. Mark's family, dealing with the aftermath, ended up moving far away. Who would have thought that being involved with Mark would lead to something like this? Life is truly unpredictable. After the incident, I took some time off and invited 2 friends on a trip. Of course, I covered all the expenses.
No way. You can't get compensation from that jerk Mark.
That's so unfair, especially after his mistress caused all that trouble.
We lounged on deck chairs at a luxurious hotel with a private pool, chatting and relaxing. Well, I wanted to file a claim, but Sarah's parents gave me a large sum of money. And besides, she's in prison now, so what's the point? It's all over anyway.
You're so tough.
Are you sure about inviting us to such a fancy hotel?
It's fine. This is the least I can do. I wanted to thank all the relatives who helped too, but they all declined any gifts. So thank you both so much. I'm going to find myself a better man.
That's the spirit.
Yeah. Hey, do you know anyone? Introduce me to someone nice.
We laughed and talked about love as we splashed around in the pool. Women really do come alive when they fall in love. Of course, one should never become obsessed. I would never want to lose myself like Sarah did in her fixation on marrying Mark. And so I regained my freedom and found happiness once again.
The cold gaze of my father looking down at me. It was an unpleasant look, as if he were seeing something filthy. Leaving me behind as I struggled with a severe illness, he abandoned my mother and walked away. That woman is probably waiting for him outside. The woman who made my mother shed bitter tears.
Sarah, I'll raise her on my own. You're the one we don't need.
My mother's soul-shattering cry was met with a scoff as he turned his back on us. After the front door closed coldly, my mother and I cried so much. But a few days later, our painful situation changed drastically. No matter how much I ignored him, my father kept calling persistently, and I was finally able to say this to him. A father? I don't have one. The tables have already turned. There's nothing my mom and I are afraid of anymore.
I'm coming over now.
The man who used to be my father shouted. Mom and I decided to set a trap and wait for him. My name is Sarah. I'm just an ordinary 11-year-old girl. The only thing that sets me apart from others is that my body is very fragile. Ever since I can remember, I've been sickly and could hardly attend school properly. I spend most of my waking hours at home. I read books or draw pictures. I always feel guilty for being such a burden to my mom. My mom's name is Emily. Even though her health isn't great either, she works tirelessly from morning till night for my sake.
Sarah, you don't need to worry about anything. It's okay. I will do my best.
But there's someone who makes her already tough days even harder. That's my father, Bob. In the stories I usually read, there are plenty of lousy adults and bad people. To be honest, my dad was worse than any of them, both as a human being and as a parent. My earliest memories are of him making my mom cry. He never brought home the money he earned, spending his time wandering around and having fun instead. The water bill, electricity bill, gas bill, groceries. Everything in our house was paid by my mom. Even after being treated so cruelly by him, I'll never forget the sight of her desperately clinging to him.
Please, just try to help. Can't you think about your family even a little?
Get off me. You want to get knocked out or something?
My dad had a mistress. He didn't even try to hide it. Anyone would think my mom should have divorced a man like him right away. But it seemed she couldn't make that decision, having no family to rely on. She didn't want me to grow up as a child without parents, like she had. My cowardly father knew that all too well, and used it to torment her whenever he could.
You don't want Sarah to grow up with a single parent, right? Then keep your mouth shut about what I do.
Is that supposed to be something a father would say? You're the worst.
Shut up. Hey, you get it, don't you? Don't even think about running to my relatives or talking to anyone at work. You pull any stunts, and it's straight to divorce. Then Sarah will only have one parent.
I wasn't so much a daughter as a hostage. As I grew older, I started to despise how weak I was. If I had been stronger, I could have stood up to him with my mom. To make things worse, my dad wasn't just a terrible person. He also loved drinking and gambling. Because of that, he was always broke and apparently even caused trouble at work. From what I know, he changed jobs 5 times. At home, all he ever did was complain about his coworkers.
They all treat me like an idiot. Just wait. Those jerks will see soon enough.
Dad would go to work hungover and make big mistakes. Then, he'd try to blow off the stress from work by gambling. But whenever he lost, which he lost a lot, he'd take his anger out on my mom. He'd often wrestle her wallet away and take out cash, no matter how hard she tried to resist.
Stop it. Without that money, how are we supposed to get through this month?
Shut up. If you need money, sell your clothes or whatever.
Whenever my parents fought like that, I would curl up in my bed. I'd cover my ears, close my eyes, and tremble, waiting for the storm to pass. Eventually, I'd hear the front door slam shut, followed by the sound of my mom quietly sobbing. By then, my pillow was usually soaked with my own tears. I hated the environment I was stuck in with all my heart. With red, tear-swollen eyes, my mom would come into my room.
Sarah, I'm sorry for all the noise.
My mom always put on a brave smile. What else could I do but smile back and tell her everything was okay? One day, I noticed something alarming on my mom's head and couldn't stop myself from shouting, "Mom, your head, your hair."
Oh, this. Sorry, it looks awful, doesn't it?
A patch of her hair had fallen out completely. It was what people call alopecia areata. I was shocked, almost as if it had happened to me. What shook me even more was learning this wasn't the first time it had happened. With eyes clouded by resignation and exhaustion, my mom looked at me and smiled faintly.
It's okay. It'll grow back if I just leave it. It did before. And besides, it's in a spot no one will notice.
But, Mom, I'm sorry. I wish I were stronger for you.
What are you saying, Sarah? This isn't your fault. You must never blame yourself. Never.
What I can do for my mom. It was simply drawing pictures and giving them to her. Since I couldn't move around freely, I let my imagination take flight. On the white drawing paper, I used colored pencils and crayons to create vivid, lively worlds. I just wanted to make my mom smile. That strong desire has always been at the heart of my creativity, both now and in the past. One day, the doorbell rang, which is a rare occurrence. My mom's voice became tense as she answered it. It seemed like something bad had arrived.
My husband isn't here, so please leave.
Who could it be? The conversation through the intercom went on for a while, and eventually, Mom, who seemed to have been persuaded, opened the door. 3 large men walked in. All of them were in suits, their expressions equally stern. The scariest looking one of them spoke up, saying that my dad owed them money. It seemed that today was the deadline for repayment.
My husband isn't home. I don't even know where he is. And we don't have the money to repay you.
She thought that being honest would make them understand. I'm sure that's what my mom was thinking. But it didn't work. The men started rummaging through the house. They opened drawers, searched cupboards, moved dressers, and even lifted up the carpet. When one of them pulled a small velvet box from the shelf, my mom's expression completely changed.
No, please, not that.
My mom, who had no family, lived in a group home until she graduated high school. When she left, the wife of the director gave her a special gift. It was a ring adorned with real gemstones, valuable enough to fetch a decent price if sold. In other words, the men had found and stolen my mom's most precious possession.
That ring is very important to me. Please, I'm begging you, give it back.
No matter how much my mom resisted, the men didn't budge. They kept turning the house upside down, looking for anything that might be worth some money. My mom, crying and screaming like a child, was completely frantic. I had never seen her so shaken before. After the men left, my mom collapsed into the mess they'd left behind and sat there, hunched over, for a long time. Then suddenly, she started moving, grabbing whatever was around her and throwing it aimlessly, crying and groaning. It was as if something she had been suppressing had burst out all at once, and it was terrifying. She rampaged like someone possessed. When I hugged her from behind, she came to her senses and started sobbing softly.
I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry.
Mom, you didn't do anything wrong. It's okay. Everything will be okay. The next day, once we had cleaned up the house, my dad came back to the room looking unusually cheerful. To my disbelief, my dad had brought a woman with him. She was a bold-looking, flashy woman.
Sorry about the mess, Lily. Emily. Coffee. Sarah, you're in the way. Go to the other room.
Oh, so this is the sick daughter? You better not, okay? Don't drag your dad down.
In the corner of the room, one of my drawings was lying on the floor. The woman called Lily picked it up without asking. Even when I reached out for it, she wouldn't give it back. In the end, she tossed it away like trash.
What a terrible drawing. No talent. Straight to the garbage.
That was the first time anyone had ever evaluated my artwork. Lily's mocking tone from that moment is something I'll never forget. Even as a child, I remember how deeply it hurt. Neither Lily nor my dad ever explicitly said what their relationship was. but it was painfully obvious to anyone. The two of them were clearly having an affair, a partner bringing its mistress into the house. And on top of that, being made to serve coffee to the mistress. I can't even begin to imagine the humiliation my mom must have felt. And then, taking advantage of a brief distraction, my dad snatched my mom's wallet.
No, stop. You can't take that money.
You idiot. If you didn't want it stolen, you should have hidden it better.
That's for Sarah's medical bills. Please, I'm begging you, don't take it.
My mom desperately tried to get the money back. My dad ran around the room, mocking her as she chased him. Watching the two of them, Lily laughed loudly. It was a sickening sight.
Hey Lily, let's go grab a drink. Staying here is suffocating.
All right. Bye-bye. Save up some more money for me, okay?
My dad turned the money my mom had earned for my medical bills into bar money for his mistress. Most people wouldn't be capable of doing such a thing, but my dad was different. He probably didn't care at all what happened to my mom or me. When my mom, crying and clinging to him, tried to stop him, he shoved her roughly and left with Lily. That happened shortly after I turned 11. Not long after, my health started to worsen. I began to get fevers more often, and I had pain all over my body that made it hard to get out of bed. When my mom took me to the hospital, I was diagnosed with a terrifying illness. Childhood cancer? Me? My mom had likely already heard everything from the doctor, and her eyes were wet with tears. Her makeup had run, leaving her face a mess. Why did all of this have to happen to me? From here on, my health would only worsen. The battle with my illness would become more grueling, and the treatment costs would pile up. I was sure my mom would work herself to the bone to pay for everything. But my dad would just use that money for his bar tabs. To be honest, my future felt pitch black. When things got this bad, all I could do was laugh. But I didn't lose control. Instead, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. What about drawing? Can I still draw, even with childhood cancer? The doctor firmly assured me that I could. He even suggested not only displaying my drawings, but also putting them up for sale. Nowadays, individuals can connect with people around the world and showcase themselves. There are countless ways to sell paintings. The doctor himself mentioned that he likes art, and even he said that he wanted to buy one of my drawings. There are plenty of my drawings at home. I had never considered the idea of pricing them and selling them. Mom and I immediately began gathering information about selling art and registered on online platforms. Some were auction-based websites, while others were platforms for gathering fans or patrons. A few days later, my dad, who had been away for a long time, returned home. It seemed he had come back to grab some clothes, as he silently started stuffing them into a bag. When I told him about my diagnosis with childhood cancer, he shockingly snorted in laughter.
So, it's over then? You'll be kicking the bucket soon, right?
How could you say such a thing to your own daughter?
It's the truth, isn't it? Good for you, Emily. No more dead weight holding you back.
Enough already.
My dad stood up. His cold gaze looked down on me. It was an expression of pure disgust, as if he were staring at something filthy. He left, abandoning me with childhood cancer and my mom. I'm sure Lily was waiting for him outside, the woman who had brought my mom to tears of frustration.
See ya, Sarah. A sick kid like you isn't my child. Honestly, it would have been better if you weren't around from the start. I'll live my life the way I want, so you guys do whatever you want too.
I'll raise Sarah on my own. You're the one we don't need.
My mom's cry from the depths of her soul was met with a scoff as my dad turned his back on us. After the front door closed coldly, my mom and I hugged each other and cried. But those tears were tears of relief. Tears of joy at being free from such a terrible man. One day, while I was drawing in my room as usual, my mom's phone rang. It was a call from my dad, which hadn't happened in a long time. He asked to speak with me. I set my pencil down and picked up the phone. His voice sounded overly cheerful and oddly buoyant.
Hey Sarah, long time no see. How's your illness? You doing okay?
What do you want? If it's nothing important, I'd like to hang up.
Hey, don't be so cold. I'm your real father, you know?
A father? I don't have one. I heard a sharp clicking sound from his side of the phone. He was clearly irritated by my lack of enthusiasm. How selfish could one man be? I started to feel sick of dealing with him. Why don't you just be honest? You found out my paintings are selling for a lot, didn't you?
That's right. Exactly. Sarah, who knew you had such talent for art? I saw the TV interview. It was something like the girl who keeps painting while battling illness, right? I have to say, as your father, I felt so proud.
Yes, it's true. My work is now receiving high praise worldwide. Thanks to the doctor's advice, I started selling my pieces online, and the results have been incredible. Every time I release new work, it gets auctioned off for increasingly high prices. Now, my bank account receives unbelievable sums of money every month. I had my mom quit all her jobs so she could focus entirely on taking care of me. We get to spend more time together, and my mom's health has visibly improved. It's been nothing but positive. I had long expected that I'd eventually hear from my dad like this. I knew he'd try to butter me up and find a way to leech off me.
I heard you're streaming videos of yourself drawing now, and you've got 200,000 subscribers or something. That alone should be enough to live off of, right? Man, you're really amazing.
Thanks. Is that all you wanted to talk about? If so, I'm hanging up.
Wait, that's not it. Listen, Sarah, I need to talk to you. I haven't been feeling great lately and can't work much. I'm completely out of money.
Oh, I see. That's too bad. Well then, goodbye.
Wait, don't hang up. Come on, I'm begging you. You get it, don't you? Just a little, please. Give me some money. You're raking it in, aren't you? You can spare some for your old man, right?
What a pathetic man. Does he even know what shame is? This is the same person who looked at me like I was trash and abandoned me. But as soon as the tides changed, he flipped and started groveling. What a worthless man. It was beyond ridiculous. Neither my mom nor I had any intention of giving even a single cent to such a horrible person. Why should I give you money? It makes no sense at all.
What do you mean it makes no sense? I'm your father, and you're my daughter. That's reason enough.
Have you already forgotten that you said a sick kid like me wasn't your child?
Well, that was just, a slip of the tongue. I didn't really mean it.
If he thought I'd fall for such an obvious lie, he was gravely mistaken. I flatly rejected him. No matter what he said, I refused to give in. Eventually, The groveling tone he had been using disappeared, and he began to show his true, disgusting nature.
Hey, that's enough. You're getting too full of yourself because I've been acting nice. Do you even realize who made it possible for you to be born? You owe me. It's time for you to repay that debt to your father.
I don't owe you anything. If anything, I resent you. Don't you get it? All you've ever done is hurt and make my mom and me cry. Don't start acting like a father now.
Oh, is that so? Fine. Got it. I'm coming over right now. You better be ready.
That's what he growled. Bring it on. I knew it would come to this. The time had finally arrived. After being on the receiving end for so long, it was time to return the favor all at once. I ended the call and told my mom that my dad was on his way. She nodded.
Just as planned. Let's make the calls and get everything ready.
Right. I'll prepare a new canvas too. I've thought of something else I want to paint. Lately, I've been overflowing with creative energy. It's so exciting to see the results that I can't stop drawing. Deep down, some of that passion came from my anger toward my dad. In that sense, maybe I should thank him. A few hours later, my dad arrived. His mistress, Lily, was with him. The icy looks they gave my mom and me were unmistakable. My dad glanced around the room and let out a mocking snort.
A tripod, a camera, canvases, easels. What's with all these paints and brushes? Oh, I get it. You're pretending to be some big shot artist? The dying childhood cancer patient pouring her soul into painting, right?
So, where are the paintings? From what I can see, there's not a single one here. Did you hide them? Last time, they were just lying around. Come on, hurry up and bring them out.
Their words were nothing but insults. I felt a burning anger rise within me. I hadn't forgotten Lily's snide comment about my work being terrible. Not that her taste in art had any credibility.
Sarah's works are all under my care, but I won't tell you where they are.
Honestly, we don't care about the paintings. Just hand over the money. You make it, and we take it. That's a win-win for everyone. Let's just go back to how things used to be. That works, right?
No, it doesn't. Why on earth should Sarah give you the money she earned for her art? It doesn't make sense. Even a child could understand that.
Both my dad and Lily seemed stunned by my mom's unusually assertive tone. Since quitting her job and focusing entirely on taking care of me and herself, my mom had changed. Her complexion had improved, her eyes sparkled again, and she looked like she was brimming with energy, both mentally and physically.
And you know what, Bob? You've done nothing but make my life miserable all these years. Like Sarah said over the phone, I have plenty of resentment, but not a shred of gratitude towards you. Don't expect to get a single cent from me.
Oh, scary. The moment you've got some money, you start acting like this. Don't underestimate me, you ugly woman. I can overpower 2 women like you anytime I want. You want me to teach you a lesson?
Force? Go ahead and try if you think you can. Let me remind you, thanks to someone like you, I developed alopecia areata, and I lost the precious jewel given to me by someone I truly respected. So come at me. I'll make sure you understand just how angry I am.
Those were such bold and aggressive words, something my mom would never have said just a short while ago. She was full of determination. Around the room were sharp objects like pencils and painting knives. If my dad tried anything reckless, he'd likely regret it. Realizing this, he just glared but didn't make a move.
Wow, you've sure gotten strong, haven't you? Like a completely different person from before.
That's right. I've reflected on my past and turned my life around. I regret all the pain I caused Sarah because of my own weakness. I should have divorced a man like you a long time ago. In fact, we never needed you in the first place.
Oh, really? So what now? You're gonna kick me out?
My dad stepped forward. Not backing down, my mom stepped forward too.
Of course, I'm kicking you out. You don't belong here. And just so you know, I'm going to sue you. I'll be filing a case with the court, so you better prepare yourself.
What? What kind of nonsense is that? Sue me? For what?
I'll take it to court and tell them everything. How I was mistreated by my husband every single day and made to suffer. I even have medical records from when I went to the hospital for my alopecia. There's no way you're getting out of this, so prepare yourself.
We have more than enough money to cover the legal fees. Through managing my work and finances, I've had the chance to connect with an excellent attorney. On top of that, I'm now somewhat of a public figure. If someone were to harm my mom, there's no way they'd get away with it. In short, my dad had already lost a long time ago. There's no way he could stand a chance against who we are now. Finally realizing this, my dad broke into a nervous laugh.
Come on, don't get so mad. I get it, okay? I don't want to escalate things. I'll back off. I'm not looking to get arrested or stabbed in the back by one of Sarah's fans.
Then what are you going to do? The only option left is to leave quietly.
Don't be so cold. Think about it. There were times when I acted like a father, weren't there? I brought home gifts now and then, complimented the food, and even put some money into the household. Right? Give me some credit for that.
Give me some credit? How shameless can one person be? Because of him, my mom and I endured so much pain and cried nearly every day. All I have are memories of the suffering he caused us. I don't have a single memory of him ever doing anything fatherly for me. But it seemed clear that neither he nor Lily would leave, no matter how many times we told them to go. My mom and I exchanged a look, silently agreeing on what to do next. We decided to let the two of them fight and destroy each other. Fine. All right. I'm willing to part with my paintings.
Really? That's my girl, Sarah. You're such a sweet daughter.
Thank you, Sarah. So, where are the paintings?
My dad and Lily darted their eyes around the room, searching eagerly. Their greedy, expectant expressions filled me with disgust. They're not here, and I haven't decided which one of you I'm going to give them to yet.
What? One of us. Obviously, it's going to me as your father.
What? Didn't she just tell you to stop acting like a father? I have just as much right as you do. After all, I've never done anything to upset Sarah, unlike you.
My dad tried to edge closer to me, only for Lily to block his way. Just as expected. Neither of them cared about anything other than their own interests. What followed was a pathetic, nasty argument between the two supposed partners.
Listen to me, both of you. Bob is the absolute worst. He's been seeing other women besides me. Can you believe that? Acting all high and mighty when he's a good-for-nothing loser with no real skills.
You're the one seeing other people too. And by the way, don't you have a husband? Just because he's overseas for work doesn't mean you can run around playing games.
I don't care. He's probably fooling around too. We're even.
My dad and Lily continued their ugly argument. Watching them made me feel sick. The thought that the same blood as someone like him ran through my veins. Thinking about it made me wish I could replace all my blood or something. My mom was just as exasperated. Her eyes, cold and detached, said it all as she looked at my dad and Lily. It was the look of someone wondering why she had ever married a man like that. Then my mom's phone rang. Even the caller on the other end must have felt fed up watching this scene.
Hello. Yes, that's right. Okay, just a moment. I'll put you on speaker so everyone can hear, Mike.
Wait, what? Mike? Dad? You mean? No way.
Hey, Bob, I've been listening, and all I hear is you spouting selfish nonsense.
Dad? What? Wait, what's going on here?
From the phone on speaker mode, my grandfather's angry voice rang out. Mike was my dad's father, who he had commanded us not to contact for years. My mom had reached out to my dad's side of the family and explained why we had been estranged all this time. My dad had avoided his family home for a long time because he was afraid of my grandfather. He even forbade us from contacting them. But those restrictions didn't matter anymore. Now, my grandparents and extended family were firmly on my mom's and my side.
I hear you've been tormenting Emily and Sarah all this time. You've always been a no-good scoundrel, and you haven't changed one bit. Have you no shame?
Wait a second. Why is Dad involved in this? What do you even know?
I know everything. We've been watching this whole mess unfold.
Watching? Wait, does that mean through that camera over there?
Yes, that's exactly what it meant. In fact, I had been live streaming everything since the moment my dad and Lily arrived. I used the same process I usually did for my video streams. But I shared the stream's URL exclusively with my grandparents. My grandparents' house was full of relatives, and they had all been watching my dad's disgraceful behavior on the TV screen.
Do you have any idea how humiliated I felt watching my idiot son make an absolute fool of himself? And let me tell you something, Bob. I know everything now. Emily has already told me your address and where that mistress of yours lives. Get ready, Bob.
What? What are you saying? Are you planning to come here? Don't do it. Don't come.
Shut up. I'm going to grab you by the neck and make you apologize to Emily and Sarah right in front of them.
My grandfather's anger was real. Even through the phone, the intensity of it was overwhelming. My mom, standing firm, added to the pressure on my dad and Lily.
Don't bother trying to run. We already know your patterns, your license plate, and the hotels you frequent. We had a private investigator look into everything. It's only a matter of time before you're caught.
What? This is the worst. What is going on here?
This is the worst. There's no way out now. And it's all your fault, you useless idiot.
What did you say? You're the one who kept wasting money, which is why I had to come up with cash in the first place. You're the one who suggested selling Sarah's paintings. Have you forgotten that?
Even at this point, the two of them kept arguing. I was so fed up that I didn't even feel like saying anything anymore. Whatever happened to these two despicable adults from now on, I honestly didn't care. In the end, my dad and Lily fled far away by car. But a week later, they were caught by the police. The reason? They were caught shoplifting at a convenience store. Apparently, they had run out of money and had no other options. If they had been able to use their credit cards, they might have managed to live on the run for another month. But that didn't happen, because my mom had contacted Lily's husband overseas and had the cards canceled. At the police station, my grandfather showed up and, true to his word, grabbed his foolish son by the collar. After paying the fines and being released, my dad was brought before us by my grandfather.
I deeply apologize for all the trouble I've caused you.
He apologized deeply. Neither my mom nor I had any intention of forgiving him. But it felt like we finally reached a turning point. Right then and there, my dad was made to sign the divorce papers and was taken back to his parents' house in my grandfather's car. Watching his dejected figure walking away, I couldn't help but think he deserved it. My mom filed for $15,000 in alimony from my ex-dad. Considering the years of mistreatment she endured, it was a pretty lenient amount. My ex-dad was also ordered to pay alimony to Lily's husband. That amount was $20,000. He had been shamelessly using the man's house while he was away, so the amount was more than justified. My ex-dad took out loans to pay both sums in full. As a result, he's now drowning in debt. Naturally, my grandparents refused to help him. He's reportedly living in a small apartment owned by an acquaintance, slowly chipping away at the repayments. The bad reputation of my ex-dad, who tormented his wife and child, has spread throughout the community, and he'll be walking on eggshells for the rest of his life. For all the selfish freedom he enjoyed before, he'll now have to live as small as possible. Just recently, my ex-dad contacted my mom. I could even hear him yelling,
Help me. I can't take this anymore. I can't stand living like this. I'll do anything, just please help me.
Anything? Then never contact me again. That's all I want.
Wait. Emily. Emily, don't hang up. Emily.
As for Lily, she didn't fare any better than my ex-dad. Her husband, who had been working abroad, left her, throwing her out with nothing. She tried to rely on my ex-dad, but she couldn't get in touch with him and ended up homeless. Returning to her family wasn't an option either, as they had long since given up on her. As a result, she became homeless in less than a month. Now, she's reportedly living among other homeless people, being taken advantage of. Childhood cancers are generally more curable than adult cancers. They tend to respond better to treatments like radiation and chemotherapy. About 70 to 80% of cases are curable, and I was one of those lucky ones. With the money I earned from selling my paintings, I received the best treatment possible and successfully beat cancer. Now, I want to keep working passionately on my art and repay my mom for all the sacrifices she made. As the first step, I built a house with a garden. It's a large custom-built home packed with all the dreams my mom and I ever had. I have my own studio, and there's also a room set up for my mom to relax in. There's also a theater room and an island kitchen. It's absolutely perfect. If I hadn't gotten cancer and met that amazing doctor, I probably never would have started selling my art. Life really is unpredictable. You never know what might turn out to be a blessing in disguise.
We've been through a lot, but we made it through somehow.
Yeah, it was worth enduring. We should give ourselves credit for that. Looking back, life had been unbelievably cruel to my mom and me. Now it's only fair for plenty of happiness to come our way. Together, we'll continue to support each other and fill our days with smiles.
Actually, I've told my wife's mother that both my parents died of illness.
The son I raised alone said this to me with a smirk. I was stunned, unable to comprehend what he was saying. Today was his wedding day, and I was just about to go and greet his fiancée's parents before the ceremony started. Since there had been no meeting between the two families, I hadn't had the chance to greet them until today. As I was caught off guard by what my son said, I couldn't grasp the situation and felt bewildered. "What are you talking about? I'm supposed to be dead." When I asked him, he answered triumphantly,
"Yes, my wife's family is wealthy, and they're not the kind of people someone poor like you should meet. I hated the idea of them having to deal with you, so I buried your existence, you know."
"Then why did you invite me to the wedding? If you wanted me to be considered dead, my being here would be inconvenient for him." Then my son burst out laughing.
"Maybe to torment you. I wanted to make you suffer. Of course, you're not allowed to attend the ceremony. Oh, this is so funny."
His mocking laughter reminded me so much of my ex-husband. Feeling a chill throughout my body, I suddenly became calm and looked at my son with cold eyes. He continued to laugh, oblivious to my reaction, and blurted out,
"Now I can finally cut ties with a grandma I hate. Just disappear."
At my son's declaration of disownment, a smile inadvertently escaped me. I'd been waiting for those words.
"Huh?"
My son looked puzzled. I firmly told him, "As you wish, let's sever our ties. I'm leaving now. My name is Tiffany. I'm 52 years old. I have a husband whom I married after an office romance. His name is David. We worked in different departments, but David was a celebrity in the office, so I had known about him since I first joined the company. This was because David had a handsome face and a friendly demeanor, which made him very popular among women. I had been quietly attracted to David from the beginning. One day, there was a joint drinking party with David's department, and that's where we quickly hit it off. David and I happened to be from the same hometown, so the conversation flowed easily, and we really clicked. Soon after, David confessed his feelings to me, and I vividly remember feeling over the moon with this unexpected turn of events. Of course, I accepted, and that's how we started dating. My relationship with David was going perfectly. He was always calm, and we got along so well that we never even had a single argument. Then, exactly 1 year from when we started dating on day, David took me to a well-known restaurant with a beautiful night view. As we were nearing the end of our meal, David, looking nervous, began to speak.
"Tiffany, I'm truly happy that I met you. If you're willing, would you marry me? I think we could make a great couple,"
he said as he opened a box with a ring in it, creating a scene straight out of a drama. With tears of joy, I accepted, and he placed the engagement ring on my left ring finger. Soon after, we registered our marriage, had a grand wedding ceremony, and received blessings from many people. At that moment, I felt like I was the happiest person in the world. I had no doubt that David and I would live a happy life together. However, my hopes were quickly shattered. Right after we got married, David began staying away from home, claiming he had overtime work or business dinners. Moreover, the once kind David suddenly became distant and indifferent towards me.
"Hey, David, can you come home early today? Let's have dinner together. I'm thinking of making your favorite beef stew."
"Shut up. Just eat by yourself. I think I'll be late again tonight. All right, I'm off to work."
He slammed the door as I stood alone in the entryway. Confused by David's sudden change, I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Since David wanted me to, I had quit my job to become a full-time homemaker, and I spent my days alone at home, tirelessly doing housework. During these lonely days, I was thrilled to discover I was pregnant. I hoped that maybe David would come home earlier once our child was born. Time passed, and 3 days after the expected due date, I gave birth to a healthy boy. We named him Eugene, and David, holding our newborn Eugene like a treasure, was moved to tears. Seeing him like this, I thought we could live happily as a family of 3. However, he soon started staying away from home again and stopped contributing much money to the household. Suspicious of David's actions, I decided to take a drastic step and follow him. After leaving Eugene with my parents, I followed David after he left work and saw him stop in front of an apartment. When he rang the bell, a beautiful woman came out from inside. David and the woman smiled at each other and went inside together. He was having an affair. As I reeled from the reality before my eyes, something inside me snapped. After that, I acted quickly. I used my savings from before I was married to hire a private investigator to look into David's activities. Soon, they gathered evidence that David was having an affair with that woman. Apparently, the woman's name was Jessica, and she seemed to be his classmate from college. I confronted David immediately to demand an explanation, but he was defiant.
Yay, that's right. I've been with Jessica for years, long before I married you. But you know, Jessica is high maintenance and hopeless at household chores. So she's not really suitable as a marriage partner. In contrast, you're plain and domestic, which made you perfect as a wife in the sense of a housekeeper. That's why I married you. Plus, my parents were nagging me to get married.
David never loved me from the beginning. I was merely chosen because I wouldn't cost much and was suitable as a housekeeper. His appalling words left me feeling devastated.
Who else would marry someone ugly like you? Have you ever looked in the mirror? Someone at your level getting married to me? There had to be a catch, right?
With that, David burst into laughter. Was he always this hideously joyful?
Is Jessica the reason you stopped bringing money home?
Somehow managing to muster my voice, I asked.
Exactly. Jessica's into the latest trends and loves fashion, so she's always asking me for bags, cosmetics, and stuff. Honestly, her looks and body are top-notch, but it costs a fortune, LOL. But I end up buying them for her anyway.
David's face as he said this was smug and vulgar.
Please, let's get a divorce.
When I finally said it, David snorted in disdain.
Yay, whatever. I never loved you or anything. Oh, what a mistake marrying you was. It was all meaningless, just a waste of time.
David never apologized. Instead, he continued to hurl abuse at me until the end. After that, I demanded alimony and child support from David and divorced him. However, David, who always disliked saving money, soon fell behind on payments. He seemed to have quit his job and disappeared, so I couldn't bring a lawsuit against him. All I could do was pull myself together and focus on raising Eugene well, trying to forget about David. When Eugene turned 1, I placed him in daycare and managed to find a job and started working again. From then on, I raised Eugene on my own. It was tough managing work, household chores, and childcare all by myself, but I did my best not to let Eugene feel the strain of being raised by a single parent. Until he finished elementary school, Eugene was a well-behaved, mother-loving child. Though he was a bit mischievous, he had almost no troubles with friends, and we managed to live quietly and peacefully together. However, when he started middle school, Eugene began to verbally abuse me.
Useless old hag. It's your fault I have to live in poverty. My life is a mess because of you, damn old hag.
As he ransacked the room, Eugene screamed these things unilaterally at me. Come on, Eugene, calm down. Let's talk this through. Even as I tried to soothe him, he wouldn't listen, and instead yelled, "Shut up," and struck me. Though still a middle schooler, Eugene was almost as big as an adult man, and his punch knocked me to the ground, groaning. Looking down at me, Eugene muttered with utter disgust,
"You make me sick, old lady."
Then, he retreated to his room. This happened repeatedly. Despite my attempts to reach out, Eugene firmly kept his heart closed off to me. Verbal abuse and violence were the norm, and Eugene often deliberately threw all the food I cooked right into the trash in front of me. Seeing my shocked expression, Eugene laughed maniacally, his face resembling his father's when confronted about his affair. Tired of Eugene's behavior, living with him became increasingly painful for me, and gradually, my affection for Eugene faded away. Still, I felt a responsibility to take care of him until he was an adult, so I scrimped and saved desperately to gather funds for his college expenses. Eugene got into his college of choice and began living on his own as soon as he started university.
Hag, you're going to miss me leaving, ho? You're going to live a lonely life from now on. Oh, and don't you dare forget to send me money every month. If you're even a day late, I won't let it slide.
Eugene seemed to think I would be lonely without him, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I was genuinely relieved that Eugene was moving out. After all his verbal and physical abuse, I was honestly surprised he still thought I loved him. It seemed he truly believed parental love was unconditional. But that's not always the case. Even parents are human and have hearts. Continuous terrible treatment from a son can extinguish any feelings of love. Since Eugene left home during the spring break before starting university, I have been living peaceful days. I never missed a month of sending money, but Eugene never bothered to thank me with even a phone call. However, that was fine by me. I didn't want anything more to do with Eugene. Years passed, and Eugene graduated from university and got a job at a certain company. One day, 3 years after starting his job, Eugene came home for the first time in a long while.
Hi, Mom. Long time no see. How have you been?
Eugene, whom I hadn't seen for years, had a gentle smile. Yes, I've been fine. And you, Eugene, have you been doing well? I asked, somewhat bewildered. It had been a very long time since he had called me Mom instead of hurling insults.
Yo, I'm working hard. I'm in sales, so it's tough, but I'm hanging in there. Man, I never thought working would be this hard,
he said with a laugh, almost as if he had returned to the kind son he used to be. After catching up a bit, Eugene started, so,
Mom, I want to apologize. I was really harsh to you during my student years, wasn't I? But, you know, it was my adolescence. I was going through my rebellious phase, so it couldn't be helped.
His words, excusing the verbal abuse and violence as mere teenage rebellion, were hard to accept. However, I chose to remain silent and just listen to what he had to say.
I really am sorry now, Mom. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. No matter how many times I apologize, it won't be enough. But I'm really sorry,
he said, bowing his head. Are you really sorry? It was the first time I had ever heard an apology from Eugene's lips, so I was taken aback.
Yo, I really am sorry. I'm 25 now and finally an adult, and I've come to realize just how terrible the things I did as a kid were. I'm sorry.
As Eugene repeatedly apologized, I softly told him, it's okay, I got it now. If Eugene was truly remorseful, I thought I might forgive him. I no longer had any affection left for Eugene, but I was willing to accept his apology.
Thank you, Mom.
Eugene's face brightened instantly, and he beamed with a full smile.
Actually, I have another big piece of news.
Big news. I tilted my head, curious about what it could be.
I'm getting married.
Really? I was surprised. I hadn't imagined Eugene getting married. But then again, Eugene was already 25 years old. It wasn't strange for him to decide to marry at this age.
She's someone I met through work. Her name is Sarah. And she's really cute and a great person.
Eugene said with a happy smile. That's wonderful. Congratulations. As I congratulated him, Eugene's smile seemed to twist slightly. His smile twisted slightly, looking insincerely smug, which gave me a bad feeling. And indeed, my intuition was about to be proven right.
Mom, I have a favor to ask.
What is it? I felt uneasy inside but asked calmly.
Could you give me a wedding gift? Look, I just apologized for my past behavior, so we're even, right? You're my only parent, after all, so a little celebration money would be appropriate, right? I mean, even though we lived poorly, you must have some savings, right? Please.
As I listened to Eugene's words, I felt a chill in my heart. So this was his true intention. His earlier apologies were also just to wheedle money out of me. He wasn't truly remorseful. Eugene looked at me with expectant eyes, and I internally sighed deeply. I could have rightfully sent him away without a word, but I thought not giving anything for his wedding might be too harsh. So, as a final act of compassion, I decided to give him a checkbook with a few $1,000s in it. It's not much, but take this check. Eugene received the check from me, and overly delighted.
Yay, thanks, Mom. Well, I've got what I needed, so I'm heading out now. Oh, I'll get in touch about the wedding details.
With that, he quickly left the house. A few days later, Eugene called to inform me about the wedding date and location.
Make sure you're not late on the day. See ya.
Wait a minute. I got the time and place for the wedding, but isn't there going to be a meeting between the two families first? I haven't even met your fiancée, Sarah, yet. I asked because it's usual to have a meeting between families before the wedding, but Eugene started laughing.
Oh yeah, the meeting. Well, her parents are busy people, so it doesn't look like it's going to happen. We'll just meet on the wedding day, all right?
Though I felt uneasy about Eugene's attitude, I thought it must be unavoidable if they were busy, and I accepted it. Okay, I understand. What about Sarah then?
Sarah's also busy, you know, with all the wedding prep and stuff. What was it? Oh yeah, she's going to bridal beauty treatments and all. So, it's fine to meet her on the wedding day too.
All right. If Sarah and her parents are okay with that, then I don't mind. And so, I ended up going to the wedding day without having met Eugene's fiancée or her parents. As I arrived at the wedding venue and was about to greet Eugene's fiancée's parents before the ceremony, I was called from behind.
Hey, Mom. Where are you going?
I turned around to find Eugene.
I was going to greet your fiancée's parents. You know, since we haven't had a family meeting yet, I haven't had the chance to greet them.
When I said this, Eugene coldly snapped back.
There's no need for that. Who said you could just go greet them on your own?
What? But it's just polite to greet them, I replied, confused, but Eugene smirked cruelly, much like he did in his student days.
My fiancée's parents aren't the type of people a poor person like you should be greeting. Her family is wealthy, from a completely different world than you.
Saying that, Eugene looked toward the entrance of the venue and waved to someone.
Hey, Dad. Over here, over here.
Following Eugene's gaze reflexively, I saw the last person in the world I wanted to encounter walking towards us.
Eugene, congratulations on your wedding.
The grinning man was my ex-husband, David. Why, I was speechless. I had no idea Eugene and David were connected. I was stunned. David looked at me and scoffed mockingly.
Long time no see, Tiffany. You're as plain and ugly as ever. Getting older and all these wrinkles and spots. You're totally an old hag now, aren't you? LOL. But hey, you look younger than I expected. I thought you'd look even more miserable.
It seems you haven't changed at all. I meant his character, but David, misunderstanding, laughed happily.
Right. I make an effort to stay young. Still a handsome guy, right? I'm still irresistible to women, you know.
Right. Exasperated, that was all I could manage to say.
Thanks for coming today, Dad.
Eugene smiled at David, and David returned a beaming smile to Eugene. They ignored me and chatted amiably. When their conversation paused, Eugene turned to me and declared,
"From now on, he's my only parent. Actually, my fiancé's parents think my mother died of an illness."
"What are you talking about? Then why did you invite me today?" I asked, but Eugene burst into laughter.
"Maybe to torment you. I wanted to make you suffer. Of course, you're not allowed to attend the ceremony. This is so funny."
David joined Eugene in laughter. Their mocking laughter was indeed very similar.
"Now I can finally cut ties with the old hag I hate. Just disappear."
At Eugene's declaration of disownment, a smile inadvertently escaped me. I'd been waiting for those words.
Huh?
Eugene looked stunned. "Let's do as you say and cut ties then. I'm leaving now." With that, I turned and walked away. As I left the venue, I silently scoffed at Eugene, who knew nothing of what was truly going on. 3 months later, today being my day off from work, I had a leisurely morning brewing coffee. When the doorbell rang, I went to answer it and found Eugene standing there. There stood Eugene, wearing shabby clothes, with a scruffy beard and a vacant look in his eyes. He looked completely different from how he had appeared on his wedding day, and I was admittedly taken aback. Can a person really change their appearance this much in such a short time?
"Mom, help me. Please, just let me come inside for now."
"I won't let you inside. We can talk here, so please keep it brief." With a feeble voice, Eugene pleaded for help, and I responded firmly. Eugene, still with vacant eyes, began to speak.
"Actually, Dad suddenly told me he has a huge debt and asked if I could help out. I was shocked, but I asked Sarah for help. Since she's wealthy, I thought she'd happily pay off her husband's father's debts, but Sarah refused, and on top of that, she said she didn't think she knew me at all, and called off the engagement."
It appears that Eugene was begged by David to help with the debt repayment, and when he turned to his wealthy fiancée, she firmly refused and even broke off their engagement.
"I had no idea Dad had any debts. I had never heard such a thing."
As Eugene told me this while crying, I quietly asked, "How long have you been meeting with your father?"
"Since I started middle school. He approached me on my way home from school."
It seems that David had been ambushing middle school Eugene. Since I divorced David when Eugene was an infant, it was natural that Eugene wouldn't remember David's face. However, Eugene came to believe David was his father after being shown an old photo that David had kept. It seems the photo was a family snapshot taken shortly after Eugene was born, featuring the 3 of us. I was surprised that David still had such a photo, but he probably kept it thinking it might be useful someday. I can assert that he didn't keep that photo out of affection.
"Then, Dad told me a lot of bad things about you, and I believed them."
What kind of bad things did he say? I could guess what they might be, but I asked anyway.
"He told me things like, 'You're poor because you're with your mom,' poor thing."
It seems Eugene had been fed lines by David such as, "You're poor because you're with your mom. You would have a better life if you lived with me. And I really wanted to take custody of you, but your mom forcibly took it away." This was why Eugene started to verbally and physically abuse me from around the time he started middle school.
"Dad always said he was wealthy and wore expensive-looking suits, so I completely trusted everything he said. But now that I think about it, maybe those suits were just rented.
That sounds about right. A man who didn't pay alimony or child support at the time of our divorce, who has no savings and evaporates after quitting his job, being wealthy. That's hard to believe. He probably approached you out of desperation because he's drowning in debt. Eugene hung his head at my words.
So, everything Dad said was a lie. He kept telling me to marry a wealthy woman, using me all along.
So, what brings you here exactly? This has nothing to do with me. As I asked with a sigh, Eugene burst out yelling.
Don't say that. Actually, Sarah was related to an important client at the company I worked for. Trying to marry her while hiding my real father's huge debt, and then getting dumped for asking her for money, has spread all over the company, and I'm about to be fired. Dad keeps asking me for money, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. Mom, please help me.
Even as Eugene pleaded with tears and snot running down his face, I felt no pity. There's nothing I can do for you. We're disowned, remember.
But I apologize. At the wedding, I was deceived by my father, so I said we should cut ties, but I didn't really mean it.
As Eugene desperately tried to make excuses, I looked at him coldly. It's not just about the wedding. I raised you alone since you were a baby. To ensure you didn't go hungry, I juggled full-time jobs and side jobs, and I also strived to keep up with housework and cooking. Yet, you only thanked me until you were in elementary school. After that, you repeated verbal abuse and violence.
That's because Dad filled my head with lies. I've already apologized for that, haven't I?
While he did apologize, it was only to extract a wedding gift from me, not out of genuine remorse. I let out a heavy sigh. You've never truly apologized to me. Besides, no amount of lies justifies the verbal abuse and violence you directed at me. Furthermore, I repeatedly tried to face him, but he did not answer me in the slightest. I have no love left for you. Even seeing you in this broken state doesn't stir any desire to help you. Please leave. As I firmly stated this, Eugene's face turned red with anger, and he shouted,
Don't joke with me. Aren't you my mother? A mother should help her child. You're inhuman.
I don't have a son. Please don't yell here. Just go home.
Damn you, old hag.
Enraged, Eugene raised his right arm to strike me. I immediately shrank back and prepared myself for the pain that was about to hit me. But nothing happened, no matter how long I waited. When I cautiously looked up at Eugene, he was groaning, ouch, and clutching his right shoulder. Maybe he injured his right shoulder. For a moment, I wondered why, but then quickly regained my senses and shut and locked the front door. Eugene was yelling from behind the door, Hey, we're not done talking yet. I'll call the police if you try anything else. Just go home. I responded, and hearing the word police seemed to have an effect, as he retorted with a parting shot, Damn you, and left. A month later, I received a call from Eugene. I did not answer, but an answering machine had been left for me, so I played it back and heard his unruly voice.
Mom, listen. Dad won't let me go. He keeps asking me for money, and if I refuse, he becomes violent. I can't say no. He's taking most of my paycheck.
The way Eugene showed signs of a shoulder injury when he appeared last month might have been due to David's violence. Even though I realized this, I certainly didn't feel any sympathy for Eugene. Violence was something he had inflicted on me endlessly. David is taller and more physically fit than Eugene, and having practiced judo in his youth, Eugene probably stands no chance against him. I could imagine that he was probably unable to fight back.
Dad seems to have a gambling addiction. Even though I give him money, he spends it before he can pay off any debts. The debt never decreases. He won't stop gambling, either. I managed to keep my job, but I was demoted to a less important position, so even though my salary is low, Dad takes so much that I can't save anything. I might be reaching my breaking point.
Eugene was sobbing, and it was clear he was desperate.
Mom, please, lend me some money. Save me. I'm begging you. It's a lifetime request.
That's where the voicemail ended. After listening to the voicemail, I immediately blocked Eugene's number. There's no way I would lend him money, and I want nothing to do with him anymore. Months later, one of Eugene's co-workers came to see me, and I learned what is he up to. Eugene had secretly recorded David's verbal abuse and violence, and after submitting this evidence to the police, David was arrested for assault. He'll be spending some time in prison. However, Eugene's mental state deteriorated, and he eventually collapsed, leading to his admission into a psychiatric ward. About a week ago, I happened to see Eugene. As I was driving past his workplace, I saw a man in a disheveled suit, looking gaunt and emaciated. It took me a moment to realize it was indeed Eugene. From a distance, it was clear he was living a miserable life, but it turned out he had been admitted to a hospital. Still, I thought it was just desserts. I hope he uses his time in the hospital to reflect seriously on his actions. Though, knowing Eugene, real reflection might be too much to expect. In any case, it no longer concerns me. Eugene's coworker told me that he had asked him to come to me if anything happened. Eugene probably wants me to look after him and manage his finances while he's hospitalized, but I firmly refuse. I politely thanked Eugene's coworker and sent him on his way. Of course, I have no intention of visiting Eugene. Soon after, I moved and started a new life in a new town, ready for a fresh start. Having been freed from the long years of suffering under Eugene and David's torment, I began to engage in hobbies like gardening and joined an outdoor club. I'm living a more vibrant life than before and enjoying every day.
I immediately put up a temporarily closed sign on my diner and headed to the apartment where my son and his wife live. The room was pitch dark, and I couldn't see well. It was chilly inside, and it seemed the heater wasn't on. I called out my 2 grandkids' names as I entered the room. Mary, Kevin, Grandma's here. As I moved further in, I saw 2 small figures moving in the unlit living room. When I turned on the light, I saw a gaunt Mary shivering in the freezing room. Next to her, Kevin was trembling while eating a banana from Mary's hand. 4 anxious eyes stared at me. What's going on? Mary, Kevin. Unable to bear it, I hugged them both tightly. Both Mary and Kevin clung to me and started crying loudly. Their tiny hands gripped my body tightly. I could only imagine how scared and lonely they must have been. Their mom collapsed and never returned from the hospital. Thinking about their feelings made my heart ache. Their dad, John, was not there. When I called to ask where he was, he laughed and said,
"We're on a family trip to Hawaii. We'll be back tomorrow."
I see. Be safe. I hung up the phone. When he returned home later, he witnessed an unbelievable scene. My name is Diana. I run a small diner and was busy with lunch today. This diner, tomorrow, was passed down from my husband's parents. Welcome. I'll get a table ready for you. Running the place by myself makes it hard to keep things moving. Regular customers reassure me not to worry when they see me flustered.
Take your time. No need to rush.
Those words give me a little comfort. Some regulars have been coming since my husband's parents' time, and others are new, living or working nearby. I love the bustling atmosphere when customers enjoy the food and chat. When someone says the food is delicious, I do a mental fist pump. I used to run the place with my husband. People can't feel good if they're hungry. So we make food that lifts their spirits. That was his favorite saying. We enjoyed coming up with the menu together, counting the money at the register, and rearranging the seating. It was fun to come up with various ideas and improvements. These days continued until our son, John, was in high school. But when John was in his second year of high school, my husband passed away in an accident. It was a tough time, and I considered closing the diner. John was preparing for college and couldn't help with the diner. I didn't think I could manage alone. During that time, one of the regular customers saw me in town and said, "We're waiting for you." That smile gave me the strength to try running the place by myself again. Don't worry, it'll work out somehow. I consulted with my friends and in-laws, and we scaled down the business to a manageable size. 3 months after my husband's death, Tomorrow reopened. John successfully passed his college entrance exams and got into his first choice school.
I want to live on my own because it's far from home.
Sure, that's okay. Let's go check out some places. I tried to accommodate John's requests as much as possible. Both my husband and I were always busy with the diner, so we didn't have much time for John when he was young. The diner was thriving, so we couldn't neglect it. Even after closing, my husband would stay to prepare for the next day. I would go home, make dinner, and spend time with John while waiting for my husband to return.
Is Dad working again today?
I still remember little John asking that every night. The sad look on his face is still etched in my mind. I wished we could have had family dinners together more often, but it only happened once or twice. I felt guilty for having made John feel lonely for so long. I want you to learn what you want and find your path, John. Give it your all. I told him this before he moved out for college. John just nodded slightly. He said nothing more. Even after he started living on his own, I continued running the small diner by myself. We had enough savings for his college tuition, so we didn't need scholarships. Those 4 years of his college life flew by. During that time, I kept the diner running on my own. After graduating, John got a job and started working as an adult. John, dressed in a suit and tie, squeezed into a crowded train on his way to work. Imagining that scene, I smiled to myself, thinking about how much little John had grown. He even had a girlfriend he was serious about marrying. When he introduced her to me, I was stunned. John's girlfriend, Maggie, was as beautiful as a magazine model.
Nice to meet you. I'm Maggie. I'm dating John.
Her beautiful voice and polite manner overwhelmed me. I thought she must come from a very wealthy family.
Not at all. We're just an ordinary family.
She laughed softly, looking very elegant. I wondered what part of John had attracted such a wonderful person. They were already living together, or rather, John had moved into Maggie's place.
I had no choice. My place was too noisy next door.
You had no choice, huh, John?
It's fine. I originally rented a slightly bigger place, so it works out well.
Maggie said cheerfully. coming to his rescue. Her polite language, refined manners, and bright smile. I instantly took a liking to her and found myself saying, "Thank you for taking care of John." They got married, and 3 years later, they had 2 children. The first was a girl named Mary. The second was a boy named Kevin. So, I've become a grandma now. I spoke deeply to my husband's portrait. On his birthday or any special occasion, I always put flowers. I did the same on the days my 2 grandchildren were born. Maggie still visited the diner whenever she had some free time, even after the kids were born.
Hi, Diana.
Oh, welcome, Maggie. How's work?
Since my kids were born, I switched to my job I can do from home.
Wow, it's amazing that you can do that nowadays. I looked back and forth between little Mary and Kevin with admiration. Even these little ones will grow up and eventually become independent like John. Thinking about it, children seem so mysterious, and I couldn't help but stare at them more intently. As the seasons passed, my 2 grandchildren continued to grow. As more wrinkles appeared on my face, Mary eventually started elementary school. Mary, how old are you now? One day, I asked Mary when she visited the diner.
I'm 6 now, and I'll be 7 on my next birthday.
Her response was so proper that she didn't seem like a first grader. She must take after her mom. Maggie said Mary was also great at taking care of her little brother, which was a big help.
They don't fight and get along very well.
She said this with a proud smile on her face. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, and the future looked bright, but that wasn't entirely the case. I had one concern. It was about John. He had a personality that couldn't stick with a job for long, even after getting hired. He quit the company he joined right after graduating from college in less than 6 months.
There were too many tasks, and the pay wasn't worth it.
After that, he got another job at a different company. But he quit this one as well in less than 3 months.
I can't do what I want, and I can't stand not having remote work.
You can't keep changing jobs so often. You'll never settle down.
It's not my fault. It's the bad economy.
Whenever something didn't suit him, he'd complain and quit. Seeing him like this, I shrugged my shoulders. If you're not working, you should at least help take care of Mary and Kevin.
What? No way. That's Maggie's job, not mine.
It was Maggie who was supporting the household in place of John. While talking to me, John was glued to his smartphone. I wondered what he was so engrossed in.
Oh, Mom, look at this. I'm into food blogging and post on social media.
He showed me his phone, displaying numerous photos of various dishes. There were photos of delicious-looking burgers, steaks, pizzas, and large meal sets. He talked about the number of followers and likes, but I had no idea what he was talking about. Instead of playing around like that, why don't you get a real job?
It's not playing. I'm serious. I'm aiming to be an influencer.
What's that?
Never mind. Just follow me and like my posts.
I don't know how to do that.
Give me your phone. Install this app, and here's how you do it.
With quick fingers, he set up an account and registered everything in no time. He also showed me which button was for like and how to navigate the app. But after he left, I still didn't understand. I can't keep up with this. I set my phone aside and focused on the bookkeeping. Occasionally, when I had video calls with Maggie, I found out she was also asked to follow John's social media. There are more important things close by that need attention than social media. I was happier seeing Mary and Kevin on video calls than anything on social media. John once helped out at my diner for a short while, right after he lost his job. He thought it seemed easier than office work. No job is easy, but I was grateful for the help. I've heard that fewer children are taking over their parents' businesses these days. I didn't plan to force John to take over, and I was prepared to close the diner when the time came. However, I wondered if perhaps something had changed in John's mind. I had a faint hope that he might want to take over the diner. I was delighted to have him work in the diner, guiding customers and taking orders. He got along well with the regular customers and chatted with them, which was refreshing to see. For the first week, things seemed to be off to a great start. Maybe this suits him better than office work. I was thinking that, but starting the following week, John gradually began to slack off. He barely took orders, didn't clean up, and hardly guided customers. To make matters worse, he started browsing social media in front of customers. He even asked regulars and new customers to follow him and like his posts. The next day, he didn't show up at the time he was supposed to start working. "John, where are you? Are you off today?"
I quit that job. It's harder than I thought.
After that, he stopped answering my calls, and I was back to running the diner alone. John stopped coming to the diner in less than 10 days. Since then, he focused more on social media than anything else. Meanwhile, Maggie had recently taken on multiple jobs and was cutting back on sleep. I worried that she might collapse someday. But John didn't seem concerned and continued his food blogging and social media posts. During one of our occasional video calls, Maggie let slip her true feelings.
I wish he could at least earn a little money.
She looked unusually dejected, her shoulders slumped. That beautiful smile was gone, and her lovely voice sounded faint. John was still out food blogging and rarely home. When I scolded him, he always said,
If I get famous and build connections, it'll pay off in the future.
I listened to his words, doubting they would amount to anything. However, if John could make a living that way, I wanted to support him. Part of me wanted to let John do what he wanted, and I was too lenient. Maggie also seemed to believe in John and couldn't strongly criticize him. Thanks to his efforts, his follower count and likes were slowly increasing. But I soon realized that was a mistake. One day, I was at the diner as usual. The weather forecast predicted a cold, cloudy day with possible snow at night. After lunchtime, there were no customers, so I spent the time preparing for the evening and cleaning the diner. While wiping the tables, my phone rang in my pocket. It was Maggie. I thought it might be another video call, so I answered. But her voice on the other end was very weak.
Diana, I'm sorry. I need to tell you something.
She told me she had collapsed from overwork a few days ago and was hospitalized for a while. Hospitalized. How are you now? Are you okay?
I'm managing somehow.
You should have told me sooner.
I'm sorry. I wanted to, but John said not to worry you.
John?
He said he would take care of our kids himself, but I'm worried about them.
Of course. Is John at home? I couldn't imagine him doing such a thing. But with his wife hospitalized, even John should take care of the kids.
He said he would look after them. I want to believe him, but
Her hesitant tone gave me a bad feeling.
he's posting pictures on social media. I don't think he's watching our kids.
Maggie followed John on social media. And just in case, she decided to check the app. John had been casually posting pictures of hamburgers on the day Maggie was hospitalized and the day after. I listened to Maggie's story in disbelief.
And the restaurant is out of state.
This couldn't wait. I couldn't imagine kids under 10 cooking for themselves without a parent at home. Got it. I'll go to your house now.
I want to come with you.
No, Maggie, you need to rest in the hospital, I said firmly and hung up. If I didn't, she would have insisted on coming along. With doctor's orders, she couldn't leave the hospital. I quickly put up a temporarily closed sign at my diner and headed to my son's apartment. It was about 2 train stops away. Thank goodness I had a spare key for emergencies. I hurriedly unlocked the door and went inside. Mary, Kevin, where are you? The room was pitch dark, and I couldn't see well. I stepped forward and kicked something like a plastic bottle. In the silent room, I took another step. It was chilly inside, and it seemed the heater wasn't on. Mary, Kevin, Grandma's here. As I moved further in, I saw 2 small figures moving in the unlit living room. When I turned on the light, I saw a gaunt Mary shivering in the freezing room. Next to her, Kevin was trembling while eating a banana from Mary's hand. 4 anxious eyes stared at me. Mary, Kevin. Unable to bear it, I hugged them both tightly.
Grandma.
Both Mary and Kevin clung to me and started crying loudly. Their tiny hands gripped my body tightly. I could only imagine how scared and lonely they must have felt. Their mom collapsed and hadn't returned from the hospital, which must have been terrifying. Thinking about their feelings made my heart ache. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner, but everything will be okay now. I turned on the heater and found coats for them until the room warmed up. I boiled water in the kitchen and made hot cocoa. Mary and Kevin drank the cocoa from their mugs, savoring every sip. I hadn't seen John anywhere. Not even his shoes were around. Hoping it was a mistake, I called John. John responded immediately.
Oh, Mom? What's up?
He said with a chuckle. What are you doing?
I'm eating a limited time menu. It's going to be a hit on social media.
Where are you now?
We're on a family trip to Hawaii. We'll be back tomorrow.
I could hear the noise of a bustling place in the background. He was definitely at a tourist spot. But he was alone, not with the family. Even now, he seemed to only think about himself. He couldn't protect Maggie or Mary and Kevin. I knew I had to protect them myself. I tried to remain calm despite my anger boiling inside. I see. Be safe.
Huh? Oh, right. And the souvenirs.
I hung up before he could finish. He had also hidden the fact that Maggie was hospitalized. And he had left the kids alone just to eat a limited time dish. When I asked Mary, it turned out John had lied about going to work.
I knew it. Mom overworked and collapsed, right?
She understood, in her own way, why her mom had collapsed. Even if she didn't know the word overwork, she knew it was from working too hard. How could John not understand what even a child could grasp?
Mom always looked unwell. So I was feeding Kevin something from the fridge.
What about you, Mary? Did you eat anything?
No, I held back.
She shook her head, her cheeks sunken and far too skinny for an elementary school kid. She must have gone without food for days while her parents were absent.
I haven't been to school. I want to see everyone, but I thought I should wait for Dad to come back.
Mary's eyes welled up again. You've been very brave, Mary. I decided to stay at their apartment that night. I wanted to cook a meal for them, but the fridge was empty. I couldn't make an omelet with just ketchup. Well, we'll have to eat out. What do you two want to eat? They were so hungry they couldn't stop naming dishes. We ended up at a casual diner, eating hamburgers, omelets, and parfaits. Seeing their smiles made me feel relieved. People can't be happy on an empty stomach. I remembered my husband's words. Once we got back home, both kids fell asleep quickly, their tummies full. Watching their peaceful faces, I thought about John. Even the next day, John didn't return. I asked Mary and checked John's social media to see what he was up to. While social media is convenient for sharing information, it also made it easy to track his actions. That day, he posted about eating pizzas at another restaurant. That boy. Just wait. I took 2 kids to visit Maggie in the hospital. Just as I arrived, Maggie was getting ready to check out after being cleared to leave the hospital. Maggie, Mary, and Kevin were thrilled to be reunited at the entrance.
But why are you here?
I can't tolerate what John is doing. You all should come stay with me.
But I can't impose on you.
You're not imposing. It's John who's causing trouble. I'm sorry for his awful behavior. I then whispered a plan to her. Maggie was momentarily surprised, but then decided to take action. John finally returned a week after he said he would. But the house was completely empty.
What the? What's going on?
He even posted about it on social media, treating it as a joke. Minutes after his post, he showed up at my diner.
Hey, Mom. Listen, Maggie and the kids.
He started talking as if he couldn't believe it.
When I got home, nobody was there and everything was gone.
So? It was lunchtime, and the diner was full of regulars. John, looking for sympathy, started sharing his story with them.
I've been working so hard on social media for my family, and my wife and kids just left.
Oh, that's tough. I listened with indifference, but the regulars had a different reaction. I could hear the sound of chairs scraping as people stood up around me. Then, slowly and quietly, they began to close in on John.
Isn't it terrible? Right, everyone?
Still not understanding the situation, John continued to provoke.
You're the guy who calls himself Johnny on social media, right?
Yeah. Are you a fan? Thanks for following me.
Not a chance. You practically forced us to follow you.
What?
Other customers nodded in agreement.
I keep receiving notifications, so I looked at your posts and found that you treat the food poorly.
Did I do that?
Yeah, You played around with free toppings and dismissed food after one bite, saying it was awful.
That was just a joke.
And you neglected your wife and kids while fooling around.
But I was trying to become an influencer to make money for them.
What influencers?
The regular customer blushed red and scolded John. Others joined in, and the diner was filled with shouts of disapproval. I had explained the situation to the regulars before John arrived. Maggie had canceled the apartment lease right after being discharged from the hospital. And now she is living with me along with Mary and Kevin. Because John had neglected his family, focusing only on his social media. Moreover, he was solely focused on increasing his followers and likes on social media. When I told the regulars about everything, they were furious, having seen John's actions online. One regular said, "I'll give him a piece of my mind," and called others to join in. Unaware of all this, John continued posting on social media.
Stop it. It's not my fault. Help me.
Crying, John was pushed out of the diner by the angry regulars.
Never show your face here again.
John was harshly scolded by the regulars and fled, screaming. After that, he disappeared. A few weeks passed. The weather forecast mentioned preparing for pollen as spring approaches. I've been feeling a bit itchy in my nose lately, probably because of that. Maggie, who suffers from hay fever, complained about her nonstop runny nose. I noticed more regulars wearing masks too. Thinking about John, I remembered that he didn't have hay fever, as far as I knew. His whereabouts were unknown. He had been urging his friends to follow him on social media in his quest for fame. But that backfired. Since that day, his social media account had been flooded with negative comments from followers who knew the situation. Of course, his identity was exposed, and he probably won't return to this town. It's karma for disrespecting food. I continued running my diner while living with Maggie and my 2 grandchildren. We recently created a website for the diner, Tomorrow, allowing customers to make reservations via smartphone. Maggie, who works in web design, handled it effortlessly. The website featured our menu and the spirit of the diner inherited from my husband's parents, as well as information about my husband.
I never got to meet John's dad, but through these stories, I feel like I know him.
It's a wonderful website. Thank you, Maggie. Her contributions didn't stop there. She systematized our inventory and sales accounting, making daily bookkeeping much easier. What used to be done by hand is now automatically calculated by entering it into the computer. How convenient. Even I, who struggled with smartphones, quickly got the hang of it. With the ability to handle phone reservations, customer traffic increased. Mary started visiting the diner after school. She even helped answer the phone.
Hello, this is Tomorrow. Yes, you'd like to make a reservation?
Though a bit hesitant, she shook her head when I offered to take over.
The special is, fried chicken. It's seasoned with special spices and fried to a crisp.
Her diligent note-taking while handling calls charmed the regulars. Everyone was enamored by her cuteness. I wondered if she might take over my diner someday, as I continued to manage it day by day.